Chapter 23-23. What was the reason for a narrow-minded person like Xiao Hua to not be stingy? Dui Qiming also understood that Xiao Hua definitely had more things in his hands. That was the storage pouches of dozens of sword cultivators. The things inside were unimaginable. Who did this belong to? Xiao Hua couldn't finish using it. If he couldn't use it, then it must belong to Myriad Thunder Valley. How many people were there in Myriad Thunder Valley? How much could Dui Qiming and Cui Hongshan get? It went without saying. What Dui Qiming admired the most was that Cui Hongshan's attitude towards Xiao Hua was still magnanimous and neither haughty nor humble. Magnanimous because he tolerated Xiao Hua's little temper, as if Xiao Hua didn't reveal his cultivation. Neither haughty nor humble because Cui Hongshan still had the face of a senior brother. He didn't call himself junior brother just because Xiao Hua's cultivation was much higher than his. Wasn't this Cui Hongshan, who didn't feel joy from external gains and was extremely refined and gentlemanly, the perfect partner in Dui Qiming's heart? Feeling Dui Qiming's tenderness, Cui Hongshan's heart felt sweet. It seemed that all the grievances he had suffered and everything he had done before had been repaid. He unconsciously clenched his fist. This clench was far beyond any other action. It was the charm of two hearts touching. Cui, Captain Cui, these are spirit stones. Zhen Minghui naturally turned a blind eye to the two's intimacy. However, when he walked past a stone pillar and accidentally touched it with his hand, he couldn't help but exclaim in astonishment. What? Spirit stones? Senior brother Minghui, you said, this entire stone pillar is made of spirit stones? Hearing this, Cui Hongshan and Dui Qiming were greatly shocked. The two let go of their hands and raised their heads at the same time, looking at that extremely tall and thick stone pillar with an inconceivable gaze. It wasn't that Cui Hongshan and Dui Qiming had never seen spirit stones before. It wasn't that they hadn't thought of thousands of spirit stones appearing in this spirit stone mine. However, such a thick crystal pillar of spirit stones was erected here as a pillar. This kind of extravagance was something they had never dreamt of even in their dreams. This is a supreme-grade spirit stone? Dui Qiming moved her eyes over and scanned it with her divine sense. However, that divine sense was blocked by the runes outside of the crystal pillar. Impossible! Cui Hongshan shook his head. This should be the low-grade spirit stones left behind after Golden Spring Mountain excavated the spirit stone vein. Hee, I'll let Captain Cui know. This is a real top-grade spirit stone. The Quanjin Mountain Qi refinement disciple who had been leading the way and had not spoken a single word could not help but correct Cui Hongshan's self-righteousness. It's not just here, there are more in other places of my Quanjin Mountain. Ah? Top-grade spirit stones. How many are there in this hall? Cui Hongshan's face flashed with extreme embarrassment, which was immediately covered up by shock. His eyes swept across the hall. There were probably dozens or even hundreds of such large stone pillars in the hall. If they were all top-grade spirit stones, then how many would there be? It was simply enough to buy the entire Cui family, right? Hee, I'll let Captain Cui know. I've counted them before, and it's exactly 81. That aura refining disciple couldn't help but show off. Moreover, I've heard the general occasionally mention that this is precisely the crystal pillar of some great formation. I understand now. Cui Hongshan nodded slightly, and his face returned to normal. He smiled and said, the Sky Patrol City is indeed generous. They've really put in a lot of effort for this spirit stone vein. Seeing Cui Hongshan's calm expression, that aura refining disciple was actually a little disappointed. Thinking of the first time he saw so many top-grade spirit stones, he couldn't calm down even after dozens of days. The aura-refining disciple led Cui Hongshan and the other two to the table. When they were about a dozen feet away from the table, the aura-refining disciple stopped. He bowed and said, Captain Cui, these are the seats for your esteemed group's disciples. Please wait here for a moment. Our general will be here soon. Cui Hongshan looked to his left and right. In front of him were disciples dressed in Taoist robes from Splendid Sect and Xuanyan Sect. On the left and right were disciples from Lian Country and Meng Country. Knowing that this seat was arranged by Golden Spring Mountain, he cupped his hands and said, "Thank you, fellow cultivator." After that aura-refining disciple left, Cui Hongshan and the others stood quietly with their eyes slightly closed, waiting for Tu Hong's arrival. After a few minutes, there was another series of footsteps. Cui Hongshan and the others turned their heads slightly and saw that the disciples of Utopia faction and Tai Ching sect were also led in by Golden Spring Mountain's disciples. Naturally, both He Fang Yuan and Yang Fangqing were shocked by this huge top-grade spirit stone crystal pillar. Looking at their astonishment and embarrassment, Cui Hongshan smiled in his heart. "Ha ha, so it's not only me, but also the disciples of these big sects are also making a fool of themselves." When He Fang Yuan stopped and glanced at the disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect, he saw that Xiao Hua wasn't among them. His face showed a trace of relief. Then he cupped his hands slightly towards Cui Hongshan and transmitted his voice. "Captain Cui, why didn't junior brother Xiao come?" Cui Hongshan replied with a smile. "Xiao Hua is refining his cultivation method. He didn't have time to come." "Captain He, what's the matter?" "Hehe, it's nothing." He Fang Yuan thought for a while and said, "Junior brother Xiao killed the bird cultivator to avenge my Tai Ching sect's disciples. Earlier, junior brother Zhao's primeval essence was exhausted and he was recovering. I didn't dare to disturb him. I originally wanted to see him here and thank him in person." I can bring these words back." Cui Hongshan was a little puzzled. "Moreover, I'm afraid tomorrow is our turn. There will be a time when we meet. Captain He can also mention this to Xiao Hua." He Fang Yuan looked around and saw Yang Fangqing's gaze. He nodded slightly at him and said to Cui Hongshan, "Actually, I have a presumptuous request. I hope you can fulfill it." "What is it?" "I hope Captain He can explain it clearly." Cui Hongshan really didn't understand and secretly wondered if it had anything to do with Xiao Hua. Sure enough, He Fang Yuan hesitated slightly before smiling apologetically. "My Tai Ching sect's disciples were saved by Imperial Thunder sect's disciples. I have already recorded this in my captain token. Regardless of whether I live or die, my Tai Ching sect will definitely repay this favor to Imperial Thunder sect. Captain Cui, your first team's contribution will not be small." Cui Hongshan heard this and was overjoyed, nodding. "This matter was all done by Xiao Hua. Hehe, Captain Cui, no need to be modest." He Fang Yuan waved his hand. "Fellow Taoist Zhao's contributions are truly great. But fellow Taoist Cui and the others didn't fear the sword cultivator and risked their lives to save him. I am truly impressed." "Hehe, many thanks, Captain He." Cui Hongshan knew there would be a "but" after this, so he smiled and nodded. "However, that disciple of my Tai Ching sect," He Fang Yuan said with difficulty, "since he was already killed by the bird cultivator, that moment of cowardice earlier can't be his only performance. Moreover, his performance since the beginning of the battle was not bad. At that time, it was just a moment of confusion. The ancients often say that a single slip will cause everlasting sorrow." Oh, Cui Hongshan suddenly realized and hurriedly stopped He Fang Yuan's words. He smiled and said, "Captain He, don't say too much. The record in my captain token is even simpler. It only states that I met fellow Taoist Tai Ching sect and helped him. Nothing else is written." He Fang Yuan heard this and was overjoyed. He bowed and said, "Thank you, Captain Cui." "Hehe, you're welcome, you're welcome." Cui Hongshan also cupped his hands from afar. In addition, fellow Taoist Yang Fangqing of the Utopia faction and fellow Taoist Kuxingxi of the Kunlun sect also had the same idea. This matter is a disgrace to all the sections. If we explain it at this time, it will definitely affect the morale of the disciples of all the sects, He Fang Yuan said again. So, we discussed and only recorded the disciples involved in this matter in the captain token. I hope that Captain Cui will not inform Sky Patrol City of this matter when you are at Quanjin Mountain. When you return to Sky Patrol City, you can report it to Yanxi Prefecture's meeting hall. After all, this is our Dao sect's own matter. There is no need to let Sky Patrol City know so clearly. Haha, this is what Xiao Hua wants. Cui Hongshan narrowed his eyes and muttered in his heart. He knew that Xiao Hua did not want to attract attention. However, Cui Hongshan frowned and said with a bitter expression, I can naturally cover up the matter regarding the Tai Ching sect's disciples, but the disciples of the other sects. Even if I agree to it, my junior brother won't agree to it. Captain, he also knows that he abhors evil. I'm afraid it will not be easy to deal with him. I'll have to rely on Captain Cui to deal with him. He Feng Yuan's heart relaxed when he heard this. Xiao Hua's cultivation was high. He was a little anxious and felt that he did not dare to say too much. Facing Cui Hongshan, He Feng Yuan could say it. We are all fellow Taoists who bathed in blood together in the sword battle. Not to mention others, fellow Taoists Yang Fangqing and Kaxingxi have long had the intention to befriend fellow Taoist Cui. Although we can't be sworn brothers with the secular world, we can share blessings and misfortunes together. Good. Cui Hongshan nodded. Just as Captain, he said, we are fellow Taoists who have gone through life and death together. Tai Ching sect's Captain, his matter is my matter, and fellow Taoists Yang and Kaxingxi's matter is also my matter. Captain He, please rest assured, I will agree to this matter. Great. He Feng Yuan was very happy and cupped his fists at Cui Hongshan again. Then, he transmitted his voice to Yang Fangqing and the others. Not long after, Yang Fangqing, Kaxingxi, and even the captains of other sects who came first also thanked Cui Hongshan. Deserting in the face of danger was indeed despised by all cultivators in the sword battle. Especially in Jinquan Mountain, in front of Patrol Heaven City, and in front of the other sects of the Three Kingdoms, it was definitely a taboo for Tai Ching sect and the other sections. Cui Hongshan not mentioning this matter was naturally giving face to the other sections. He Feng Yuan and the others had to accept this favor, and this favor was also extremely huge. Then, Cui Hongshan transmitted his voice to Zhen Minghui and Dui Qimeng. Both of them nodded. Dui Qimeng looked at her lover and felt that he was even more lofty. Cough cough, a low cough came from behind the table in front of everyone. On the stone wall behind the table, a faint yellow light flashed, and a short and even somewhat stooped old man walked out of the light. Seeing that the cultivator's white hair and the hardships on his face, Cui Hongshan was secretly disappointed. This was not the image of General Tu Hongtu in his heart. To be continued. Chapter 23-24. Fellow Taoists, my family's general has some matters to attend to and will be delayed for a moment. This old man came first to apologize to all of you fellow Taoists. The old man walked to the side of the table, but didn't sit down on the jade chair. Instead, he slowly walked to the side of the table and cupped his hands across his chest as he spoke. Sure enough, this isn't Tu Hong. Cui Hongshan was overjoyed. He immediately probed the old man's cultivation. Sure enough, he was only at the late foundation establishment realm. We wouldn't dare. Senior Tu is busy, so we will wait here. For him to send Senior here, it really makes us juniors panic. A disciple of the Splendid Flower sect respectfully said, This old man is Lon Exin. I am the general's assistant. The old man smiled. Fellow Taoists have come to help and are honored guests of my Golden Springs Mountain. How could this old man not come to receive you? However, because this is a war, wine is not allowed. Otherwise, with the general's hospitable personality, he would have already prepared a feast to welcome you. Old Master Lon, what are you saying behind my back? A hearty voice sounded out. From the brilliance that Lon Exin had just appeared, a tall middle-aged cultivator walked out. Cui Hongshan's eyes brightened. This cultivator had a square face. His face was fair and clean, with silkworm eyebrows and phoenix eyes. His nose was like a hanging gallbladder, and he had a long beard. His eyes were filled with righteousness. This is a true general. Cui Hongshan secretly cheered in his heart. Not only does he have a dignified appearance, but he is also kind and approachable. He only delayed us for a moment, and yet this subordinate has to come here and apologize. He is truly admirable. Looking at Tu Hong's body, he wasn't wearing an ordinary Taoist robe, but a soft armor that protected his vest. The valiant aura of this armor accentuated his scholarly elegance, making him stand out from the masses. General, how could this old man dare to speak ill of the general? I was only casually chatting with fellow Taoists. As Lan Xian spoke, she turned to the cultivators and nodded with a smile. But at this time, Lan Xian's eyes swept over the disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect and saw the smiling Dui Qimeng. Lan Xian's eyebrows shot up, her eyes flashing with amazement. But then she turned to look at Tu Hong. As Tu Hong saw Lan Xian's gaze, he was also startled. Following her gaze, he naturally saw Dui Qimeng. Tu Hong's pupils suddenly widened, then returned to normal. Even the expression on his face changed slightly. Hee, old Master Lan, have you seen the fellow Taoists from the various sects who came to reinforce us? Tu Hong was still smiling as he asked. His gaze left Dui Qimeng and gently swept across the disciples of the other sects. All right, I'll let the general know that I haven't had the chance to get to know each and every one of you. Lan Xian also regained her composure. She bowed and said, this old woman didn't think that the High General would arrive so quickly. And all of you are my Jianghu Mountains guests. They risked their lives to come here. How can this old man treat them badly? There's no need to mention other trivial matters. As Tu Hong spoke, he cupped his hands across his chest and said, this old man is Tu Hong, the guard of my Sky Patrol City at Jianghu Mountain. Fellow Taoists have come to my Jianghu Mountain for many days, but this old man has not seen any of you, so I feel very uneasy. I ask that fellow Taoists be magnanimous and forgive me. We greet Senior too. The cultivators didn't dare to be negligent. They all bowed in respect. Do you think this old man is old? Tu Hong stretched out his hand and stroked his 5 strands of beard. He smiled and said, it looks like this old man will have to call himself Tu. Senior Tu is truly approachable. A captain of the Black Sky sect smiled and said, your appearance is similar to this junior's senior apprentice brother. If Senior wasn't a Golden Core cultivator, then this junior would have called you senior apprentice brother. Lan Xian also smiled and said, the High General has eaten the youth-preserving herb, so your appearance will never change. In addition, your hot-bloodedness has ensured the safety of my Jianghu Mountain. That is something this old man cannot do. That's enough. Tu Hong waved his hand and sat down on a jade chair. He smiled and said, the greetings are over. Fellow Taoists, please tell me about the situation from Sky Patrol City. This way, this too can have a clear idea of what happened and see if there is any way to reveal our whereabouts. Lan Xian replied from the side. She turned to the cultivators and said, fellow Taoists, please follow the order of the Lian Nation, Meng Nation, and Shi Nation. Follow the order from the beginning to the end. Thus, the disciples of the various sects followed Lan Xian's instructions. One by one, they began to recount what happened after they left Sky Patrol City's transmission array. As for Tu Hong, he sat upright on his jade chair, his expression solemn. He no longer had the playful smile from before. His eyes shined as he listened, and from time to time, he would interject and ask a few questions. It's a bit troublesome. Cui Hongshan heard the disciples of the various sects say that they had encountered different sword cultivators. They had fought life and death battles, and there had been some casualties. Moreover, the cultivation of these sword cultivators wasn't too high. Cui Hongshan suddenly realized that they had encountered dozens of swordsmen. That was definitely not something that the 10 disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect could deal with. If this matter were to spread out, Xiaohua would definitely become famous in one fell swoop. But that bastard concealed his cultivation, wasn't it because he didn't want others to know? Last time at Chicken Crow Mountain, he also clearly said not to mention his cultivation. Cui Hongshan said with a faint feeling of jealousy. However, after he heard He Feng Yuan and Yang Fengqing's words, he had a plan in his heart. What these two people said was the same as what they had discussed before. They only said that they had encountered a beast cultivator at the end, and at the critical moment of being besieged, the Imperial Thunder Sect disciples had come to help. They didn't mention any disciples that had escaped. Since others had concealed it, he could certainly conceal it. When Cui Hongshan reported, he clearly stated the route he had taken, as well as the sword cultivators and beast cultivators he had encountered. However, the cultivation and number of sword cultivators had shrunk. Tu Hong also nodded as he listened. After Cui Hongshan finished, he said, "In a great battle of the sword path, our Dao sect's cultivators should work together to resist the enemy. This time, Imperial Thunder Sect came to help our Jin Quan Mountain Spirit Stone Mine. They had done well in this matter. When the other sect's disciples were in danger, they stepped forward despite the difficulties and risked their lives. They should be rewarded." Then he looked at the others and said, "I would like to report this to Sky Patrol City and award Jin Quan Mountain's first great merit to Imperial Thunder Sect's first team. Does anyone have any objections? My Tai Ching sect supports it." He Fong Yuan was the first to raise his hand without hesitation. Yang Fangqing, Kuxingxi and the rest also agreed. The other cultivators looked at each other helplessly. It was very obvious that although there were more than a dozen disciples behind the Imperial Thunder Sect who hadn't reported, from the previous reports, it seemed that apart from the first team of the Imperial Thunder Sect who acted to save others, most of the other teams didn't care about their own safety and escaped if they could. Even if someone acted, it was only to save one team. How could they save 4 or 5 teams at once? We have no objections. The other disciples naturally knew that Tu Hong was trying to motivate them and raise their morale. They had no objections to Imperial Thunder Sect's reward, so they raised their hands and agreed with a bitter expression. Chapter 23-25. Captain Cui, bring out your token. Lan Xian said with a smile. Yes. Cui Hongshan's heart was filled with excitement. This merit came too easily. His luck. This opportunity was truly indescribable. After Tu Hong wrote something on Cui Hongshan's token, he looked at it and smiled. I have always been clear about rewards and punishments. For the Imperial Thunder Sect to do such a good deed, I must definitely reward them. Afterwards, I will report this matter to Sky Patrol City and ask them to inform the meeting hall to reward the Imperial Thunder Sect's first squad. Cui Hongshan received the token and bowed. This junior thanks Senior too for the reward. This junior will engrave this matter in my heart and carefully explain Senior's words to this subordinate. I will strive to achieve more merits in the sword war. Good. Tu Hong clapped his hands. Fellow Taoist Cui's words are exactly what I was thinking. The sword war has just begun and there will be many opportunities for you to achieve merits. Even in my Golden Spring Mountain, there will still be opportunities to do so in the future. I want to see which fellow Taoist is worthy of my reward. Furthermore, as fellow Taoists can see, my Golden Spring Mountain may not have much, but we have a lot of spirit stones and other items. If any fellow Taoist can contribute to my Golden Spring Mountain, this too will definitely not treat him unfairly. Yes, we understand. Everyone's eyes brightened as they heard that there would be spirit stones as rewards. They bowed and said. After waiting for the dozens of sects to finish explaining the situation, Tu Hong smiled and said, Fellow Taoists, you have worked hard. Under the arrangement and leadership of all of you, although there are close to 3,000 disciples who came to my Golden Spring Mountain, according to what I know, they did not arouse the suspicion of the sword cultivators. This is indeed worthy of celebration. In fact, this is a great merit. I will definitely report this matter to Sky Patrol City. Yes, thank you Senior too. The cultivators beamed with joy. As for the rest of the fellow Taoists, I will leave the arrangements to fellow Taoist Lan. I still have some official business to attend to, so forgive me for not accompanying you. Tu Hong stood up and cupped his hands before turning to leave. As he left, his eyes couldn't help but sweep over the Imperial Thunder Sect's Dui Chimeng. Farewell, Senior 2. Everyone bowed. Dui Chimeng was also very grateful for Tu Hong's reward to the Imperial Thunder Sect and smiled respectfully. After Tu Hong left, Lan Xen took out a jade slip from her bosom. She smiled and said, Fellow Taoists, here are all Foundation Establishment cultivators. You are far stronger than the disciples of my Golden Springs Mountain. My Golden Springs Mountain will definitely provide you with a strong support. For the past 10 days, the Commander-in-Chief has been racking his brains to make arrangements to properly set up the defense of my Golden Spring Mountain. Of course, as fellow Taoists can see, my Golden Spring Mountain's defensive array is perfect. Even if sword cultivators were to fly over it, they wouldn't be able to sense it. At the same time, this old man will reveal one more thing. Even if 10 illusory sword cultivators attack at the same time, my Golden Spring Mountain's defensive array will definitely not be broken. Furthermore, these 10 illusory swordsmen may not be able to escape unscathed. As these words came out, all of the cultivators present smiled. Even if Lan Xian's words were a bit exaggerated, the truth was that she could resist at least 5 of them. 5 sword cultivators that were equivalent to Golden Core Stage cultivators. Just how sturdy was this Golden Spring Mountain's array? Just how stable would they be inside the array? Sending so many disciples out, isn't this a bit too much for the assembly hall? Are the other spirit stone veins the same? Many ideas were born in the minds of the disciples present. Of course, this array formation still needs someone to preside over it. As if Lan Xian knew what everyone was thinking, she smiled and said, "Fellow Taoists, you will be the main force behind this array formation in the future. However, I ask that fellow Taoists rest assured, there is no need to consume any magic power. As long as you understand the law formula, you will be able to channel the heaven and earth spiritual energy from the spirit stones into the array formation. My Golden Spring Mountain may lack many things, but there is one thing that I lack the most, and one thing that I do not lack the least. What I do not lack the least is spirit stones, and what I lack the most is disciples with the same cultivation as you fellow Taoists." Then, Lan Xian carefully explained the matters of the patrol. She divided the days and areas that each squad would patrol, and finally gave out the jade slip for the defensive array formation. However, when she passed the jade slip to Cui Hongshan, there was a slight hesitation. It was just that Cui Hongshan and the others didn't notice this. Everyone took their respective jade slips and bowed to bid their farewells to Lan Xian. Lan Xian quietly stood there, watching everyone leave. Her eyes didn't hesitate for a moment as she stared straight at Dui Qiming's back. He waited until Dui Qiming held Cui Hongshan's hand and walked out of the hall. Then he sighed, turned around, and walked into the stone wall that had appeared. As the stone wall flashed with a brilliant light, his figure disappeared from sight. He didn't even care that there were still many Dao sect disciples that were slowly walking away. The place that Lan Xian appeared in was like a palace. Besides the gorgeous carvings and exquisite decorations, there were only a dozen or so handsome servants standing around. Seeing Lan Xian walk in, the servants immediately bowed in greeting. Lan Xian simply ignored them and didn't ask where Tu Hong was. She walked down the corridor, heading towards the deepest part of the palace. She knew that besides that place, Tu Hong absolutely wouldn't go anywhere else. As Lan Xian walked, the decorations of the palace became even more gorgeous. But the number of servants also decreased. When she arrived at a secluded quiet room, there was no one left. The quiet room was very empty. It wasn't too large and was quiet. Lan Xian stood in front of a stone wall, quietly standing there without speaking. After waiting for half a cup of tea's time, a slightly tired voice sounded out, "Old brother Lan, you can come in." This voice was Tu Hong. "Yes, this old man obeys." Lan Xian respectfully responded. Then, she saw a yellow circle appear on the stone wall. The circle slowly rotated, forming a deep vortex. A massive suction force covered Lan Xian, sucking her in. Lan Xian didn't struggle. She knew that this spell was personally controlled by Tu Hong. Without Tu Hong's permission, no disciple of Gold Spring Mountain could enter. Of course, as far as Lan Xian knew, besides her, no other disciple of Gold Spring Mountain could set foot in this forbidden land. The place where Lan Xian's figure was revealed was different from the palace. It was actually a slightly barren place. Not only was the light dim here, but the temperature was also much lower than in the snow region. This barren place was completely paved with cobblestones. Between the cobblestones, there were some light purple thorns that stubbornly pointed towards the sky. Above the thorns and cobblestones, there was a layer of frost like salt. On top of the cobblestones, around 100 feet away from Lan Xian, there were 2 massive tents erected there. These 2 tents were oval in shape, with a high protrusion in the middle. There was a several-foot-tall mast erected in the middle of the tents, and above this mast was a square flag. However, this flag was empty without any sign at all. Just as Lan Xen stood there, her white hair began to condense into a layer of frost. However, he didn't step forwards. Instead, he placed his hands on his chest and lowered his head, silently looking at the cobblestones beneath his feet. It was like every cobblestone had its own sad and beautiful story. Old brother Lan, how long has it been since you last came? Come and have a drink with me. Yes, I will obey the orders of the general. As Lan Xian heard Tu Hong's words, she lifted her foot and walked towards the tent, step by step. Every time she stepped on the cobblestone would emit a rustling sound. These cobblestones actually didn't have any spells on them. When Lan Xian arrived in front of the tent, she saw the tent's curtains. Her eyes flashed with a strange light. She lifted the curtains and walked in. The tent was covered with a thick cotton carpet. As she stepped on it, she felt weak all over. On the left side of the curtains was a giant sand table. On it were some mountains and rivers, as well as several cities. There were even some small humanoid dolls standing on top of it, holding long spears in their hands. In front of the curtains, there were some ordinary chairs placed on top of the cotton carpet. Behind these chairs, there was a shelf, and on this shelf, there were sabers, spears, swords, halberds, and all sorts of other weapons. In front of the curtains was a table. This table had already faded in color and was extremely similar to the table in the reception hall. There was also a flask on top of it, and within the flask were some arrows. After these arrows, Tu Hong held a large bowl in his hands. He glanced at Lan Xen, tilted his head back, and drank all the strong wine in the bowl. And on top of this table, there was a blue porcelain jug. Gold Spring Mountain Tu Hong, a Golden Core Realm cultivator's secret hideout, was actually a military tent. Lan Xen walked in front of the table and picked up the blue porcelain jug. She respectfully poured wine into the bowl that Tu Hong had placed down, and then filled another bowl to the brim. She picked up the wine bowl with both hands and raised it above her head. She respectfully said, "Lan Xen offers a toast to the general." Good. Tu Hong stretched out his hand, placing his index and middle fingers on the inside of the wine bowl and his thumb on the outside. He gently lifted the wine bowl and brought it forward until it touched Lan Xian's bowl. He said, "Come, cheers." Gulp, gulp, gulp. As Tu Hong gulped down the wine, the strong liquor flowed down his long beard and actually soaked his armor. If Cui Hongshan was here, he would definitely open his eyes wide. He couldn't believe that the refined Tu Hong actually had such a bold and unrestrained side to him. That's great. Lan Xian also drank in a single breath. Her clothes were soaked through. She sighed, "This is still a burning knife. Spicy and satisfying, the taste doesn't change at all. It's far better than any spirit wine. Since you haven't drunk in a long time, let's have 2 more cups." With a loud crash, Tu Hong slammed the wine bowl on the table and reached out to pick up the wine jug. Lan Xian didn't dare to be negligent. She quickly grabbed the wine jug and apologetically smiled, "This old man will." As she spoke, she poured out 2 more bowls of wine and accompanied Tu Hong to drink 2 more cups. Suddenly, a dark red color rose up from Lan Xian's face. "Old brother Lan, your capacity for alcohol, even though you've reached foundation establishment, you still haven't changed." Tu Hong smiled. He reached out for the wine jug and poured himself a bowl, not giving one to Lan Xen. "This old man can't compare to the general." Lan Xen smiled and said, "I don't need to use true essence to refine this strong wine. 2 bowls are enough." Chapter 23-26. I'm afraid you won't be able to experience the taste of 1,000 cups without getting drunk." Tu Hong waved his hand and drank another bowl of wine. Lan Xen smiled as she watched Tu Hong drink the wine, the dark red on his face gradually fading away. After Tu Hong drank a bowl of wine, he didn't stop. Instead, he drank another bowl after another without stopping. Lan Xen only respectfully stood there, watching, not saying a single word. Tu Hong picked up the wine jug and couldn't pour out a single drop. With a sigh, he tossed the wine jug to the side on the thick cotton carpet. Lan Xen hesitated for a moment and then said, "This old woman, didn't dare to ask. I wonder what Mian Shan's methods were like? Naturally, it would shock the world. Even I found it inconceivable. Tu Hong's eyebrows shot up. He glanced at Lan Xen and then back at the empty bowl. I'm afraid this old woman will have to congratulate General? Lan Xen looked at Tu Hong's expression and tentatively cupped her hands together. If this was before today, I would have been overjoyed to hear your congratulations. Tu Hong said as he looked at the empty wine bowl, a bit self-deprecating. This. Lan Xen bit her lips. She didn't know how to respond. Come, old brother Lan, come with me. Tu Hong bitterly smiled and stood up from his chair. The chair creaked, as if it were also abnormally old. Lan Xen's heart tightened. She quickly followed behind Tu Hong. Tu Hong stood up. After several steps, he arrived at another curtain of the tent. As Tu Hong lifted the curtain, he saw the situation of the other tent. This tent was even more desolate. Besides a bed-like object standing in the middle of the tent, there was nothing else. And on this bed was a transparent crystal coffin. And inside this crystal coffin, there was a beautiful female cultivator lying on her back. If a single Imperial Thunder Sect disciple were to come here, they would definitely cry out in amazement. This was because this beautiful female cultivator looked almost exactly the same as Dui Qiming. As Tu Hong stepped into the tent, the anxiety in his eyes gradually faded and was replaced by a trace of gentleness. His footsteps were light, as if he was afraid of waking up the female cultivator from her sweet dreams. As Lan Xen entered the tent, she looked towards the crystal coffin. But as she saw the appearance of the female cultivator within, she frowned. She followed Tu Hong and quietly walked in front of the crystal coffin. Yu Meng, as Lan Xen saw Tu Hong standing in front of the crystal coffin without speaking, she tentatively asked. But before she could finish speaking, Tu Hong raised his hand, indicating for her to shut up. Then he clapped his hands together and took out a small bell from his storage bag. It was very similar to Xiaohua's soul-sucking bell. Then Tu Hong raised his hand and lifted the lid of the crystal coffin, revealing the face of the female cultivator. There was a faint layer of frost on her charming face. She was just like an ice beauty. Dang dang dang, the soul-suppressing bell in Tu Hong's hand rang. The female cultivator's tightly shut eyes slowly moved, then she opened them. She slowly stood up, looked around, and jumped out of the crystal coffin in a flash. She bowed to Tu Hong and said, "Greetings, husband." Yu Meng, stand up. With a smile on his face, Tu Hong reached out and grabbed Yu Meng's hand. The coldness from Yu Meng's hand instantly penetrated his heart. "Congratulations, Lord General." Lan Xen bowed, her face full of amazement. The soul cultivator techniques of the Million Meng Mountains, they are truly, truly mysterious. This old woman really cannot imagine it. Huh, what's there to be happy about? Tu Hong ruefully smiled and pointed at Yu Meng. Old brother Lan, take a look. Is there any difference between Yu Meng and the past? Or perhaps, is there any difference between us? Lan Xen didn't know if she had seen clearly just now, but she looked again and again. She smiled and said, "Lord General, this old woman saw that Yu Meng's eyes were dull, without any emotion. She is somewhat similar to a puppet. But she is indeed Yu Meng. She is similar to the Million Meng Mountains soul cultivators. The promise is also similar." That's right. Tu Hong nodded. He looked at Yu Meng and smiled. When I first saw Yu Meng open her eyes from the crystal coffin, the ecstasy in my heart was incomparable. At that time, I only thought that even if I had to give the entire Goldspring Mountain to the soul cultivators, it would still be worth it. But when I saw Yu Meng's current appearance, I couldn't help but feel disappointed. It's just that they clearly said that the dead cannot be resurrected. Although the soul cultivators' secret techniques are linked to the soul, they cannot create something out of nothing. They can only use a soul artifact to control a person's body. To put it bluntly, Yu Meng is not the Yu Meng of the past. She is now nothing more than an empty shell. She is only relying on this soul artifact to support herself. As he spoke, Tu Hong shook the bell and said, Yu Meng, help your husband bring over some strong wine. Yes, this concubine understands. Yu Meng bowed and slowly walked towards another tent. Her face was as cold as ever, without the least bit of emotion. Isn't this similar to the magic of some of the cultivation sects in the country of Shi? Lan Xen looked at Yu Meng's graceful back and whispered, the Million Meng Mountains soul cultivators wouldn't deceive us, right? No, they wouldn't. Tu Hong shook his head. What I'm looking for is not an ordinary soul cultivator, but someone with some background. Someone who has a deep understanding of my Dawn Rain continent, is far from those uncivilized soul cultivators. Moreover, they have clearly stated that those aristocratic families in the country of Shi are refining Yu Meng's body into a puppet. Yu Meng will listen to whoever takes the soul artifact. But at this time, Yu Meng is relying on her soul to disperse the mark in her body. She only recognizes me. Even if someone else were to take the soul artifact, it would be useless. Of course, Yu Meng has been sacrificed for many years. I used this crystal coffin to preserve her appearance. If I didn't use a soul cultivator's secret technique to refine her, she still wouldn't be able to leave this place. That's right. Lan Xian understood. She sighed and said, a perfectly good person is now nothing more than a puppet. Even I, an old man, am unable to calm my heart. That's right. Before today, I also had the same thoughts. Tu Hong's eyes flashed with sorrow. I only wanted to stay by Yu Meng's side and watch her unchanging appearance slowly grow old. When the day comes that I reach the end of my life, I will accompany her to the 9 nether realms. But today, I saw a living Yu Meng. Lan Xen forced a smile. That's right. Tu Hong's eyes flashed with a thoughtful expression. When I saw that female cultivator from the Imperial Thunder sect, I was simply stupid. Wasn't this a gift from the heavens? A few days ago, the soul cultivators had just left, and now this female cultivator has delivered herself to my doorstep. Wasn't it because the heavens saw my painstaking efforts and came to help me? Chapter 23-27. A million soul cultivators from Meng Mountain? Lan Xian also thoughtfully asked. At this time, Yu Meng walked in with a jug of wine in her hands. She easily placed the jug in front of Tu Hong. Oh, where's the wine bowl? Tu Hong took the jug and glanced at Yu Meng's empty right hand. I'll go get it. Yu Meng's expression didn't change. She lightly said as she turned around. No need. Go back and rest. Tu Hong's face flashed with gloom as he whispered. Yes, husband. Yu Meng complied and entered the crystal coffin again. She lay down on her back and closed her eyes. Dang dang. Tu Hong shook the bell again, and Yu Meng immediately quieted down and remained motionless. Let's go. Tu Hong closed the lid of the crystal coffin and turned to leave the tent. Lan Xian didn't dare to be negligent. She quickly followed him out. Outside the tent, it was abnormally cold. Tu Hong looked up, squinting his eyes as he looked at the pitch-black ceiling. After a long time, he tilted his head back, took a sip of the strong wine, and handed the jug to Lan Xian. Lan Xian didn't dare to refuse. She also took a small sip, but she didn't hand the jug over to Tu Hong. Tu Hong pointed a finger above his head and said, the soul cultivators have already said that if I hadn't spent a great deal of money to bid for this magic tool fragment called the icy mirror, then I would have created an icy cold space here. If I hadn't placed Yu Meng in the crystal coffin after she died, then even if they had secret soul cultivation techniques, they still wouldn't have been able to awaken her. Moreover, if they didn't have Yu Meng's soul, or if they had a soul that was extremely similar to Yu Meng's soul, then she could only move about in the crystal coffin and the icy mirror. A soul that is similar to Yu Meng's soul. General is saying. Lan Xen cried out in surprise. Tu Hong didn't even look at Lan Xian. He lifted his hand and took the jug of wine from Lan Xian's hand. He took a long drink and laughed. Yes, it is that female cultivator from the Imperial Thunder sect. Although I don't know if her soul is similar to Yu Meng's, since they have the same appearance, it is extremely likely that their souls are similar. How could I possibly give up such an excellent opportunity? This old man understands. Lan Xian nodded. When I assign tasks, I already switched the Imperial Thunder Sect's positions and transferred them to the most core area. General, find an opportunity to capture Imperial Thunder Sect's Dui Qiming. Sigh, what a pity. If it were that simple, why would I hesitate? Tu Hong smiled bitterly. Lan Xian thought for a moment and smiled. Are there any other taboos? Yes, there are a few taboos. Tu Hong nodded. First of all, the soul cultivator told me that the soul must be in perfect condition and must not be damaged in any way. Secondly, the owner of the soul must be willing, otherwise the soul won't be pure. If it carries the owner's imprint, it will break Yu Meng's imprint. If Yu Meng can no longer be resurrected, even if she changes her body, she will still be Dui Qiming. This is troublesome. Lan Xian shook her head. This Dui Qiming seems to be a couple with their captain, Cui Hongshan. He's just an early-stage foundation establishment brat. He's nothing. Tu Hong sneered. This too knows that this time I have completed the city lord's plan. How could he not grant this small wish of mine? Won't the Yanxi prefecture grant the wish of a Jindan stage cultivator from the Sentry City? Do you want this old man to? Lan Xian whispered. No need. Tu Hong arched an eyebrow and proudly said, it would be easy for this Tu to kill that bastard, but this Tu disdains it. Besides, if Cui Hongshan dies in Golden Spring Mountain, others won't say anything. But when this Tu asks the city lord for Dui Qiming in the future, wouldn't those people be able to use it against me? If those self-righteous fools from the Yanxi prefecture investigate this matter, then it will become an obstacle. This old man understands. Lan Xian nodded, but then asked, then I, Golden Spring Mountain, won't protect Cui Hongshan? Won't I let him die here? This too won't do it, old brother Lan won't do it, and even my Golden Spring Mountain disciples won't do it. Tu Hong drank another mouthful of wine and smiled. But who can guarantee that a sword cultivator won't do it? This too can't protect a Imperial Thunder Sect disciple just because he has scruples. Wouldn't that be even more of a weakness? This old man understands. Lan Xian nodded. This old man knows what to do. In this war, 5 out of 10 will remain. If the Imperial Thunder Sect disciples are lucky, then they will survive. If they aren't, then let them die. Tu Hong picked up the wine jug and slowly walked back into the tent. In Lan Xian's eyes, his back was increasingly lonely. Lan Xian sighed. She knew that it wasn't appropriate for her to stay here any longer. She bowed and said, General, this old man will retire. Go. Tu Hong waved his hand. Arrange everything well. Perhaps that sword cultivator will come in a few days. Lan Xian turned and walked towards the stone wall. A powerful vortex sucked her in, and she disappeared from sight. What? There are actually so many top-grade spirit stone crystal pillars in the reception hall? Xiaohua had been called out from Cui Hongshan's seclusion room and was very unhappy in his heart. But when he heard that Golden Spring Mountain's top-grade spirit stones were used in such a manner, his eyes began to shine. He smacked his lips and said, Isn't this too much of a waste of heaven's gifts? Looking at Xiaohua's appearance, Cui Hongshan gave birth to a trace of contempt. Damn it, it's a good thing that I didn't let this bastard go, otherwise, I'm afraid he would have thrown himself onto those spirit stone crystal pillars and used his teeth to bite off a piece of the top-grade spirit stone. A wandering cultivator, no matter how high their cultivation is, they are still different from my cultivation family's upbringing. No matter how high Xiaohua's cultivation is, compared to Senior Tu Hong, the difference is like clouds and mud. Junior apprentice brother Xiao, Golden Spring Mountain's crystal pillars are array formations. They are used for defense. Zhen Minghui chuckled as he explained. He naturally understood Xiaohua's shock. Wasn't he also dumbfounded at that time? Also, what that disciple of Golden Spring Mountain said was correct. Golden Spring Mountain may lack anything, but they will never lack spirit stones. That's great. We came to the right place. Xiaohua rubbed his fingers together, as if he were already holding some top-grade spirit stones in his hands. Immediately after, Cui Hongshan said a few more things, But Xiaohua didn't listen in his heart. His mind was filled with the shiny spirit stones. Xiaohua, Cui Hongshan shouted. What's the matter? Xiaohua obviously didn't hear what Cui Hongshan said. He was slightly stunned. Cui Hongshan was happy in his heart. He didn't care about Xiaohua's expression and said, Golden Spring Mountain Senior Tu Hong gave my Imperial Thunder sect a great merit the moment we met. This Cui knows that this is all thanks to you. Now, this Cui wants to discuss with you, should this Cui directly record your merit in the captain token? Or should this merit be recorded on my first squad's disciples? Cui Hongshan mentioning this matter in front of everyone was quite thought-provoking. It could be said that he was frank and sincere, but it could also be said that he had ulterior motives. However, Xiaohua was too lazy to think about what he was thinking. He waved his hand and said with a smile, naturally it's everyone's merit. If it wasn't for everyone trying their best to kill the beast cultivators, I'm afraid you would have already been killed by them. Junior Marshal Brother Xiao. Dui Qiming glanced at Cui Hongshan with some dissatisfaction and advised, actually against the sword cultivators, we did put in some effort, but against the beast cultivators and giants, it was all thanks to Junior Marshal Brother Xiao. It's all thanks to Junior Marshal Brother's strength. If we lose the credit, we won't feel at ease. Merit or storage pouch, which is more important? Xiaohua pursed his lips and extended his hand. Senior Marshal Sister Dui, feel free to ask for the merit. Just give the items to Junior Marshal Brother. Junior Marshal Brother doesn't know. Dui Qiming was anxious. After the Sword Dao battle, we will return to the Imperial Thunder sect and be rewarded according to our merit. Isn't this merit good stuff? NN. Xiaohua nodded. When the time comes, just give the good stuff to Xiaohua. All right. Dui Qiming sized up Xiaohua with her beautiful eyes. She really didn't understand why Xiaohua didn't like to be famous. If she had Xiaohua's cultivation, she would have already made a name for herself in the Sword Dao tournament. By the time she returned to the Imperial Thunder sect's Dui Lei Palace, wouldn't she be able to get whatever cultivation method and spirit pills she wanted? Maybe everyone has their own ambitions. Dui Qiming could only think like this. After that, Cui Hongshan took out Quan Jinshan's jade slip and told them the area that the Imperial Thunder sect's first squad had to guard, as well as the location of the supporting array. He then made 10 copies of the jade slip and gave each of them a copy. The Imperial Thunder sect was responsible for a very large area. If 10 people patrolled together, they wouldn't be able to take care of the entire area. Cui Hongshan complained about Quan Jinshan's irresponsible arrangement and divided the 10 people into 5 groups. 2 people in a group and divided the area they would be patrolling. It was unknown whether it was intentional or not, but Ming Mao and Xiaohua were in the same group. Xiaohua didn't care, but Dui Ling, who was in the same group as Zhen Minghui, was already pouting. Let's go. Cui Hongshan acted as if he didn't see it and waved his hand. Today is our first shift. Let's first familiarize ourselves with the environment and set an example for the others. After all, if we were rewarded the moment we arrived, the others will definitely be jealous. Yes, we understand. Zhen Minghui and the others nodded with a smile, but Xiaohua didn't care and secretly said, he really is a fan of politics. This is also the quality of a cultivator aristocratic family. Everyone flew out of the quiet room, and Ming Mao and Xiaohua each showed their tokens and entered the cave that the Qi refinement disciples had dug out from. After flying for a while, they passed through several crisscrossing tunnels and gradually entered the depths of the jade mine. The 10 people of the Imperial Thunder sect's first small team were divided into 5 groups and flew towards different tunnels. Junior Brother Xiao. After flying for a while, seeing that Xiaohua didn't say anything and didn't make any arrangements, Ming Mao couldn't help but ask in a low voice, how should we patrol? Should we follow the route or go against it? It's so troublesome? Xiaohua was stunned when he heard this. He didn't expect that there would be so many ways to patrol. He thought that he only needed to fly once. I'll teach Junior Brother Xiao that when doing something, there should be a plan. What to do first, and what to do afterwards, all of these must be thought out in advance. Ming Mao said with a smile, otherwise, it'll be a mess. Junior brother Xiao wants to become the pillar of my Imperial Thunder sect in the future, so you'll definitely be in charge of a branch. It's better to nurture these abilities as early as possible. Chapter 23-28. Don't. Xiaohua felt a headache as soon as he heard this. He was used to doing as he pleased. What planning? What controlling? How could it compare to freedom? Xiaohua waved his hand and said, "This little brother's brain is lazy. Let senior apprentice Sister Bright Eyes arrange everything. This little brother will just accompany you from behind." Haha, Bright Eyes chuckled and said, "Senior apprentice brother Zhao's magic power is profound. These are all small details that you don't need to think about. In short, once senior apprentice brother has a status, there will definitely be people who will give you advice." Captain Chui mentioned that Lan Exin. She must be one of senior Tu Hong's strategists. What are strategists? Xiaohua didn't understand. 4 golden core stage cultivators like senior Tu Hong, or even nascent soul stage cultivators, they only care about their cultivation base and cultivation base, and are too lazy to divert their attention to the affairs of Golden Spring Mountain. Therefore, there are some cultivators who are good at handling these affairs who come out to help and give advice to Senior Tu Hong. These are the so-called strategists. Bright Eyes patiently explained. Oh, so that's how it is. Xiaohua nodded. He understood that there were some cultivators who didn't have much of a future in terms of cultivation, so they attached themselves to high-level cultivators in order to find a way to improve themselves. Thinking of this, Xiaohua inexplicably thought of the Immortal Beauty School. Senior apprentice brother Xiao is really smart. Just a hint and you understand. Bright Eyes smiled and flattered. Senior apprentice Sister Bright Eyes, please don't praise me. This little brother will be your strategist. You should lead the way. Xiaohua smiled and stretched out his hand. Strategists? Bright Eyes was surprised at first. Then she covered her mouth and laughed. I didn't think that senior apprentice brother Xiao would be so humorous. I really didn't realize it before. As she spoke, Bright Eyes didn't hold back. She picked a tunnel entrance and flew in. Sweat, this Xiao wants to lead the way, but it's a pity that this Xiao always gets lost. It's better if I don't. Xiaohua looked at Bright Eyes' figure as she flew away. He smiled and thought to himself, besides, walking at the back isn't that bad. There was a saying in the secular world that said, men and women work together. These words were also applicable to the cultivators of the cultivation world. At least, that was what Ming Mao thought. She flew with Xiaohua for half a day, and it was extremely relaxing. Occasionally, she would even joke with Xiaohua, and the two of them chatted very harmoniously. However, the only thing that made Ming Mao unhappy was that all the topics were started by her. When she didn't speak, Xiaohua would just follow behind her without saying a word. I still have to work hard. Ming Mao inwardly encouraged herself. Xiaohua didn't know what Ming Mao was thinking. His mind wasn't on flirting at all. His mind was already on the Spirit Stone Mine. The stone walls in the Spirit Stone Mine were rather strange. They restricted spiritual sense and Buddhist sense, and they couldn't go very far. It seemed to be a natural restriction. Although Xiaohua tried his best to release his Buddhist sense, he could only see about 100 feet away. Therefore, although he and Ming Mao flew through a few tunnels and saw a few caves, they didn't discover anything. This caused Xiaohua to be displeased. Xiaohua rolled his eyes and said in a low voice, Senior Sister Bright Eyes, didn't you notice anything strange? Hearing Xiaohua's sudden question, Ming Mao was secretly happy. She hurriedly asked, Junior Brother Xiao, did you notice anything? Senior Sister Bright Eyes, don't you feel strange? Xiaohua's eyes darted around as he looked at the spacious tunnel and said, This is the interior of the Golden Spring Mountain Spirit Stone Vein. It must be bustling with noise and excitement. Not to mention the disciples mining the spirit stones, there must be many disciples patrolling the area. Why haven't we seen any disciples of Jingquan Mountain after flying for so long? Ming Mao didn't think so much. Her thoughts were the same as Xiaohua's, and they weren't on patrol. I guess this isn't the center of the Spirit Stone Mine. Ming Mao thought for a moment and said with a smile, We are only here to help. Jinquan Mountain won't let us see the center of the spirit stone mine. It's good enough that they let us patrol without worry. They still want us to contribute to the defensive array, right? Senior Sister Bright Eyes is right. Xiaohua nodded, but I'm still worried. How about this? Senior Sister will patrol according to the plan that we discussed earlier. I'll go take a look, see if there's anything wrong. Saying that, Xiaohua's figure flashed and quickly rushed towards a cave on the left. His figure quickly disappeared into the cave. Junior brother Xiao. Ming Mao was shocked. She stretched out her hand and shouted, "This is an important place of Jinquan Mountain. How can we?" But how could Xiaohua hear her words? He had already flown away. Why is this fellow so reckless? No wonder Captain Cui was dissatisfied with him. Ming Mao muttered. She looked at the place where Xiaohua disappeared with some reluctance. Then she felt an ominous feeling in her heart. Could it be that he didn't want to stay with me? That's why he found an excuse to escape? My appearance isn't any worse than Shue's. It's just that my master isn't as powerful as her master. My Dui Lei Palace is just slightly worse than Sun Lei Palace. I can't miss this good opportunity. Senior Sister Dui said it right. Opportunities are meant to be grasped by people. Otherwise, it wouldn't be an opportunity. In any case, Shui and he haven't undergone the dual cultivation ceremony yet. I still have a chance. And even if they dual cultivate, what can they do? For a cultivator with an outstanding cultivation like Xiaohua, what's so strange about having a few more dual cultivation partners? If I don't take advantage of the fact that Xiaohua hasn't revealed his strength, I won't be able to regret it in the future when Xiaohua is targeted by many female cultivators. Thinking about how domineering Heavenly Thunder Palace is, no matter how shy this fellow is, I will still capture him. Xiaohua didn't expect that he had already become Ming Mao's target. After he flew into the cave, he first used his divine sense to make a mark on the side. Then, he immediately put on his camouflage robe and used a concealment technique. He followed the cave and flew underground. However, after flying for nearly the time it took to eat a meal, Xiaohua arrived at an even more remote place. He saw that this place was very messy. The ground was filled with stone fragments of various sizes. Occasionally, there were small pieces of spirit stone fragments on top of the stone fragments. Ha, I'm afraid I'm close to the spirit stone mine. Xiaohua's eyes lit up. He didn't have time to think about why this place wasn't cleaned up. His gaze swept across the place and he flew towards an opening at the end of the cave. There wasn't anyone guarding that opening. When Xiaohua flew into the cave, he couldn't help but be shocked. He saw that this was a square space that was 100 zhang long and several tens of zhang deep. The cave entrance was right above this space. This space was completely empty. There was nothing inside. Wu Xiaohua was very bored. He let out a soft sigh. That woo-woo sound reverberated in the entire space. It was as if Xiaohua was sobbing in his heart. Damn it, Xiaohua's divine sense swept over and he cursed, "This is definitely an abandoned mine that has already been mined." Without waiting for this sound to finish reverberating in the space, Xiaohua immediately turned around and went back to search again. However, Xiaohua's luck didn't seem to be good today. It wasn't suitable for him to make a fortune. He searched for a while more. When Ming Mao's patrol was about done, he had no choice but to go back. He found 2 more empty and abandoned mining sites. Are you kidding me? Xiaohua was depressed. When had great Taoist Xiao, who was known as "thieves don't leave empty-handed," ever been humiliated like this? No, Xiaohua thought. Today is my first patrol. Quan Jinshan might not care. Furthermore, there might be disciples from other sects who have the same plan as this young master. Their cultivation is not good enough. They might be discovered by Tu Hong. This way, there might not be any opportunities in the future. Today, this young master must get to the bottom of this. That's right. In the entire Quan Jinshan, the one with the highest cultivation was Tu Hong, an early-stage golden core cultivator. This kind of cultivator, in Xiaohua's eyes, had no pressure at all. Wasn't the entire Quan Jinshan waiting for Xiaohua to bring disaster to it? Thinking, Xiao Hua formed a hand seal and entered the ground. He opened his left hand and opened his delusion breaker Dharma eye. He carefully searched for the location of the spirit stone mine. It was a pity. Although the Dharma eye was powerful, Xiao Hua couldn't see far. It was no different from his divine sense. Just as Xiao Hua was about to close his transcendence eye, a dozen or so huge earthen yellow pillars suddenly appeared several feet in front of him. Good. Xiao Hua's eyes widened in an instant. His magic power surged as he dashed forward. "Oh, there are people here." Just as Xiao Hua's figure appeared in a huge space, he was stunned. He saw that this space was actually densely packed with cultivators. And these cultivators were all sitting cross-legged in groups of 3 to 5, surrounding these huge pillars. There was even a faintly discernible gaze that unconsciously swept past the place he appeared. This is bad. Xiao Hua hurriedly dodged and used the trace concealment technique again. There's someone. Sure enough, the gaze that saw Xiao Hua unconsciously swept past Xiao Hua's body and was immediately stunned. He shouted and his gaze returned to the place where Xiao Hua disappeared. At the same time, he jumped up. Who? Hearing the strange movement of that cultivator, the nearby cultivators all opened their eyes and looked towards the sky. Beside the cultivator, a middle-stage foundation establishment cultivator also jumped up and swept his divine sense over there. However, Xiao Hua disappeared without a trace. It was as if he had never appeared. The cultivator's divine sense swept for a moment but did not find any trace of him. "Su-hu, what did you see?" That cultivator frowned and glared at the cultivator who jumped up first and asked. This subordinate seems to have seen a figure appear. Su-hu gritted his teeth. He himself was also not sure. "You saw it?" That cultivator looked up and down, half believing and half doubting. What did he look like? What was he wearing? This. Su-hu smiled bitterly. He originally saw it unconsciously and Xiao Hua disappeared in an instant. How could he remember clearly? After thinking for a moment, he shook his head and said, "This subordinate could not see clearly." That cultivator said coldly. "That means you are not sure? Also, you did not carefully comprehend the details of the array. Instead, you were casually looking around?" "Captain," Su-hu hurriedly said, "it's not that this subordinate did not want to comprehend it. It's just that the details of this array are too profound. This subordinate was worried that I would delay the great general's plan. This subordinate opened his eyes and wanted to relax. However, this subordinate really did not dare to lie. I heard that in these few days, the disciples of the various sects of the Tao sect have come to my Golden Spring Mountain. If someone were to find this place..." Chapter 23-29. Shut up. The team leader berates, "You only need to comprehend your own technique. Where are the other matters for you to worry about?" Yes, this subordinate understands. Su-hu is still unwilling to give up. He looks over and uses his spirit sense to scan the area. There really isn't a single trace of magic power, nor is there any trace of him. You go sit down and continue comprehending. The team leader looks around and berates, "All of you hurry up and work hard. The general said that after the Tao sect cultivators come, we won't be able to stay peaceful for long. We must familiarize ourselves with the array before the sword cultivators come. This matter is crucial. Whoever dares to delay the general's plan, even if I don't say it, all of you should know the consequences, right?" Yes, this subordinate understands. When everyone hears, they don't dare to look anymore. Even the disciple who opened his eyes earlier hurriedly sits down and closes his eyes to comprehend. The team leader waves his hand and directs a dozen disciples who are also in the middle stage of foundation establishment to fly into the air and surround Xiao Hua's hiding spot. Unfortunately, Xiao Hua has already flown away. How can they find him? Following which, the dozen disciples searched the entire space once again but still couldn't find any trace of him. They can't help but hesitate. A cultivator says worriedly, "Team leader, this matter is a little difficult. If we report this to the general, he will definitely be furious. We actually allowed the Tao sect cultivators to find this place. But if we don't report this and there really is such a person here, I'm afraid it will cause trouble. Actually, from what this old man sees, there isn't anyone here. The team leader thinks for a moment and smiles. The ordinary invisibility talisman can't use magic power. If someone is flying in the air, he will definitely reveal himself. Furthermore, this place is within the mine. Even the 5 elements escape technique can't penetrate deep. Team leader means? We don't need to report? Of course we need to report. The team leader smiles. If we don't report, how will the general know of our hard work? How will he know that our vigilance is high? Yes, this subordinate understands. The disciple suddenly realizes, this subordinate will go over now. You stay here and comprehend, this old man will personally go over. Yes. The disciple's eyes reveal a trace of disappointment. He follows the other dozen people to their seats and sits down while the team leader flies out. After Xiao Hua concealed his tracks, he directly walked over the heads of these Jianghu mountain disciples. These middle-stage foundation establishment disciples didn't notice at all. I'm overjoyed. Xiao Hua was still remorseful as he flew. Needless to say, this must be the top-grade spirit stone crystal pillar that Zhen Minghui was talking about. That Golden Spring Mountain disciple was right. Other than the array formation in the guest hall, there should be 9 more in the other places. This is one of them. I was wondering where all the patrolling disciples of Golden Spring Mountain had gone to. So they were all hiding within the array. Tu Hong's plan is really well thought out. He wants the disciples of Jin Shanquan to control the main part of the array and the Dao sect disciples to control the unimportant parts. He wants my Dao sect disciples to work for him. That's why I'm looking for spirit stone veins. I can't waste my magic power for nothing. Xiao Hua knew that the disciples in the formation would definitely search for it, and they would definitely report it to Tu Hong. Therefore, he didn't dare to be negligent and continued to search along the tunnel. When he found an abandoned mine next to the array formation, Xiao Hua scratched his head. Fuck, are you kidding me? Don't tell me that all the spirit stone veins in Jinshan Quan Mountain have already been emptied by Sky Patrol City? Why didn't they leave anything for me? Following which, Xiao Hua turned around hatefully and was about to escape back. But just as he turned around, Xiao Hua still wasn't satisfied. With a wave of his hand, he took out the spirit-seeking mouse and scolded, "Little Silver, your mother isn't here. I'm your mother's mother, why can't you understand what I'm saying? Quickly go and find the spirit stone veins, otherwise I won't let you eat any more spirit herbs." Then, Xiao Hua glared fiercely at Little Silver, not caring whether it understood or not. It was strange. At this moment, Little Silver was different from Imperial Thunder Sect's myriad Thunder Valley's Little Silver. As soon as this guy was released from the space, it immediately raised its nose and sniffed around. After a while, its eyes immediately lit up, and just like the crystal pillar of the supreme-grade spirit stone that Xiao Hua had seen earlier, it burrowed into the ground beside Xiao Hua. Haha! Xiao Hua was overjoyed. Without saying a word, he made a hand seal and followed it. The spirit-seeking mouse was indeed a spirit-seeking mouse. It was completely different from Xiao Hua's blindness. It had a purpose. It directly burrowed into the ground without any hesitation. Xiao Hua used Earth Escape to follow it. He clearly felt that the pressure underground was different from before. Not only was there an extremely heavy force pressing down on his head, faintly imprisoning all the vital essence in his body, but there was also a strong force pushing him out. Moreover, this layer of soil was extremely fine and it was very difficult to escape through the ground. He had to consume a lot of vital essence for every foot he traveled. Fortunately, Xiao Hua's vital essence was extremely strong, and he didn't show any signs of exhaustion even after diving down several hundred zhang with the spirit-seeking mouse. However, the force pushing him up was even stronger, and Xiao Hua gradually found it a little strenuous. Moreover, a lot of time had passed, and Xiao Hua was ready to beat a retreat. But just as Xiao Hua was about to call out to the spirit-seeking mouse, his eyes instinctively lit up. The spirit-seeking mouse stopped and very happily pounced forward. My goodness, this is... Xiao Hua also stopped. his eyes wide as he stared at the crystal that was several hundred zhang tall in front of him. He couldn't help sucking in a breath of cold air, and some liquid flowed in his mouth. Xiaohua stretched out his hand and touched the ice-cold crystal. His divine sense swept over it, and he couldn't help groaning again. Damn it, I'm rich. This doesn't seem to be a supreme-grade spirit stone. This should be chalcedony. It's an extremely rare chalcedony found in spirit stone veins. Thinking this, Xiaohua no longer hesitated. He stretched out his hand and took out Qiu Yinlu. Gathering all the strength in his body, he stabbed at the chalcedony spike. With a muffled clang, the sharp demonic weapon, coupled with his incomparable strength, actually pierced a small part of Xiaohua's Qiu Yinlu into the spike. I'm a little too excited. Xiaohua used all his strength to pry open the Qiu Yinlu, but the chalcedony didn't budge at all. Xiaohua couldn't help but smile bitterly. As long as he used all his strength to pull the Qiu Yinlu out, he would use less strength. Then, Xiaohua would pry left and right, prying out several pieces of chalcedony in succession. After putting the chalcedony into his space, Xiaohua didn't dare to stop. With a wave of his hand, he put Little Silver, who was pouncing on the chalcedony, into his space. Completely ignoring the hidden bitterness in Little Silver's eyes, he immediately rushed back to the surface. When Xiaohua returned to the tunnel following the divine sense mark, he saw a pair of anxious bright eyes looking around. Chapter 23:30. Oh, what's wrong? Xiaohua turned around the cave and asked with a smile. Xiaohua, where did you go? Seeing Xiaohua appear, Ming Mao was pleasantly surprised. She immediately pounced over, hurriedly and naturally holding Xiaohua's hand as she said anxiously, I didn't go anywhere. I'm just watching from the side. Xiaohua also pulled his hand out without leaving a trace and pointed behind him. Then, why did you take so long? Captain Chui's communication talisman has been here for a long time, urging us to hurry back. Ming Mao reproached, her voice seemed to be bitter. Moreover, your communication talisman can't be sent out. How can this concubine not be anxious? My communication talisman can't be sent out? Xiaohua was slightly stunned, but fortunately, the communication talisman can't be sent out, otherwise if he was in the array, wouldn't he be exposed? That's right, where did you go? Ming Mao rebuked. Xiaohua shrugged and smiled. This little brother is indeed nearby. The reason why the communication talisman can't be sent out is because this is a spirit stone mine, right? What does this have to do with a spirit stone mine? Ming Mao asked curiously. Let's hurry up and leave. Xiaohua smiled and flew up. Didn't senior sister say that Cui Hongshan sent a communication talisman? Hee, Cui Hongshan is your senior brother. Why are you still calling him that? Ming Mao asked with a smile. Xiaohua's brows twitched, but he didn't reply. Ming Mao blinked her eyes, knowing that Xiaohua wasn't willing to talk about it, so she didn't ask anymore. The two of them flew back from their patrol area. Just as they flew back to their resting area, they saw that in front of the quiet room, there were disciples from various sects standing there with displeasure on their faces. What took you so long? Cui Hongshan reproached again. Ming Mao hurriedly said, Captain Cui, this concubine received your communication talisman and hurried back, but because it was the first time I was on patrol, I flew slowly and just happened to be at the farthest place. Fortunately, Jin Shan Quan's disciples haven't come yet. Cui Hongshan muttered and didn't ask any more. What's going on? Ming Mao asked curiously. Junior brother Xiao and I were just patrolling the area. According to the disciple of Golden Spring Mountain, he vaguely mentioned that there seems to be a problem with one of the patrolling guards in Lian country. Cui Hongshan frowned slightly. Xiaohua rolled his eyes. The place he went to was really far away from the place where the Imperial Thunder sect was patrolling. As for where he went, he really didn't know. He didn't even know which sect helped him take the blame. However, with him, the main culprit here, that sect would not suffer any losses. Sure enough, after another cup of tea's worth of time, Lan Xian personally arrived. As she looked at the many disciples gathered in front of the quiet room, Lan Xian smiled and cupped her hands across her chest. Fellow Taoists, I've disturbed you all. That was a false alarm. I'm really sorry. "What's going on, fellow Taoist Lon?" one of the captains asked in a displeased manner. "Hee, it's nothing." Lon Qin didn't hide anything and said, "I found traces of an enemy in one of the array cores of my Golden Spring Mountain array. But my Golden Spring Mountain disciples didn't find any sword cultivators that entered, so this old man thought that it might have been a fellow Taoist that came as reinforcements that mistakenly entered the array core." Of course, the fellow Taoists from Lian Country's variant beast sect were also patrolling at that time. The disciples of the other nearby sects also didn't go to the array core. So this old man thought that my Golden Spring Mountain disciples had made a mistake. That disciple was severely punished just now. "Oh, so that's how it is." The captain nodded. "This matter is truly important." It's normal for fellow Taoist Lon to be cautious. If fellow Taoists can understand this old man's difficulties, then that is for the best. Lon Xen cupped her hands across her chest and said, "Fellow Taoists, when patrolling, it is best that you follow the predetermined area and do not overstep it. Also, because my Golden Spring Mountain collects spirit stones, there are many underground caves that are similar to a maze. If some fellow Taoists are curious and go in the wrong direction, they really might not be able to return. Remember this, remember this." Then, Lon Xen bid everyone farewell and left. Cui Hongshan looked at Xiao Hua and the others, but didn't say anything. In his heart, he faintly felt that there was something strange about Xiao Hua and Ming Mao coming back so late, but he also didn't ask anything. In the next few days, although Xiao Hua restrained himself a bit, he still found time to directly take Little Silver underground and crazily mine for jade marrow. It was just that this jade marrow was really hard. At first, it was fine, but later, Xiao Hua directly took out the wishful iron rod and used it to cut off a small piece. Just as Xiao Hua was overjoyed, in the vicinity of the Spirit Stone Mine at Golden Spring Mountain, a dozen sword cultivators came. The sword cultivator in front of them was none other than Ling Yunwu of the High Wind Sword Sect. Ling Yunwu's eyebrows were tightly furrowed. The flying sword under his feet slowly flew as he swept out with his divine sense, slowly searching. Poor Ling Yunwu. The first time he came to White Jade Mountain, he couldn't find any clues at all. When he came the second time, he relied on a secret technique to find some clues, and found the place where the dozens of bright swordsmen he trusted had been killed. Even if he found it, what was the use? Ling Yunwu still didn't have the slightest clue. This place is very far away from Sky Patrol City. Furthermore, it's barren. Which Golden Core cultivator would come here? Or hundreds of Foundation Establishment cultivators? To completely surround my swordsmen? The cultivators of Sky Patrol City were forced by LV Ruochang's plan to guard the Spirit Stone Mine. Then there must be hundreds of Foundation Establishment cultivators coming to reinforce White Jade Mountain. If they were just passing by, it's impossible for there to be hundreds of them, only a few or a dozen. Only in the vicinity of White Jade Mountain can they gather together. But where is this Spirit Stone Mine? It's not like I haven't been here before, but I've never found any signs of a Spirit Stone Mine. Ling Yunwu was really going crazy. He also had a mission to attack the Spirit Stone Mine, but it wasn't near White Jade Mountain. Furthermore, compared with attacking the Spirit Stone Mine, his mission was more important. That was Dark Silk Wood, which LV Ruochang had obtained by chance in Million Mountain Meng. Now that he needed it, where was he going to find another piece? Moreover, there was also the sword pouch, which was also a very precious thing. He had lost it just like that. He felt ashamed just thinking about it. He was really too careless. After flying for half a day, Ling Yunwu arrived at the mountain range of Spring Gold Mountain. Ling Yunwu sighed and landed on the mountain range. The disciples scattered around him also flew over. Everyone's face was full of embarrassment. Obviously, they didn't find anything. Senior Brother Ling, a disciple who was also an illusory sword cultivator, said softly, "Those Foundation Establishment cultivators. I'm afraid they've already returned to Sky Patrol City. The possibility of success is extremely small if we search inch by inch." Sigh, that's strange. Ling Yunwu sat on a huge rock in the mountain range and smiled bitterly. LV Rucheng sent a flying sword message saying that she couldn't find the sword pouch's trace even with her secret technique. That sword pouch was either imprisoned by a powerful magic power, or it was too far away from the sword region. Maybe I've guessed wrong? Is there really a late-stage golden core or nascent soul cultivator? This, a nascent soul cultivator wouldn't attack a drawing sword disciple, right? At most, it would be a golden core cultivator. The disciple said softly. Sigh, maybe. Ling Yunwu didn't comment. The most important thing now is to find the black silk wood. Otherwise, the beast cultivator senior's life will be lost. I won't have the face to see anyone. I've been here before, but I haven't seen any spirit stone veins. The disciple looked at the endless pine trees and shook his head. We can't find it, but it doesn't mean it's not here. Maybe it's under the forest? Ling Yunwu snorted and waved his hand. The flying sword flew out like a raging fire. Boom, boom, boom. It destroyed all the trees in a radius of hundreds of feet under the mountain range. For a moment, flames soared into the sky. Looking at the crackling flames burning and slowly extinguishing, the charred trees fell to the snow-covered ground. A bitter smile appeared on the disciple's face. He bowed and said, "Why don't I bring the disciples to the forest to have a look?" "Go." Ling Yunwu nodded. "Find more places." The disciple accepted the order and left. Following which, boom, 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 sounds came from the forest. Trees began to fall to the ground. Sigh, it feels like searching for a needle in a haystack. Although the Ling Feng sword sect's disciples moved quickly, the area they searched was still pathetically small compared to the entire forest. Who knew how long it would take for them to search through the entire forest? Sigh. Ling Yunwu sighed softly again. He felt a faint sense of regret. He knew that everything had already happened and regret wouldn't solve anything. However, he couldn't help but think. Of course, this wouldn't have happened, right? After the time it took to brew a cup of tea, Ling Yunwu seemed to have rested enough. He flew up and stepped on his flying sword. He charged into the sky and flew towards the other side of the Golden Spring Mountain. However, just as he flew for 100 feet, another sword light came from the northeast. This sword light was as blue as water and incomparably clear. Oh! When Ling Yunwu saw this sword light, a smile appeared on his face. He covered up all the dejection he felt earlier. With a push, the fiery red sword light under his feet flew forward to meet the incoming sword light. When the sword light flew closer, a beautiful middle-aged woman could be seen on the flying sword. She was dressed in the standard sword cultivator attire. She had big eyes, a towering chest and snow-white skin that was very eye-catching. "Husband!" The female swordsman shouted when she saw Ling Yunwu. "Oh, Wantodo, why aren't you on duty in Swords Gate? What are you doing here?" Ling Yunwu smiled and stretched out his hand as if he was going to catch the female swordsman. This female swordsman was Ling Yunwu's wife, Yuan. Yuan's face was full of smiles. Before she flew to Ling Yunwu's side, she couldn't wait to take out a sword scroll and shouted, "Husband, I have good news to tell you." Chapter 23:31. Oh, what good news? Ling Yunwu raised his other hand and took the sword scroll that Yuan handed over. However, that hand held Yuan's soft hand. Hee, husband will know once you take a look. Yuan was actually a little out of breath, and her face was even a little red. It was really a symptom of forcefully activating the sword origin and flying on the sword. Ling Yunwu's heart ached, but he was not in a hurry to check the sword scroll. He said with pity, "If there's any news, can't you just send a flying sword message? Why do you have to come here yourself? Not to mention the sword origin, this journey will not be safe. If we meet a cultivator from the Dao sect, your husband..." Hee, husband. Just take a look first." Yuan did not wait for him to finish and laughed. "How can a flying sword message be safer and more convenient than me coming here myself? Besides, I'm also worried about you. If I don't come and see for myself, how can I be at ease?" Hearing Yuan's words, Ling Yunwu felt sweet in his heart. He released his spirit sense to check the sword scroll. This is an image. Yuan smiled as she reminded him, but her eyes revealed a trace of mischief. Hee, Wan Air, how old are you? You're still so naughty. Ling Yunwu smiled bitterly, and the gloominess in his heart faded a lot. When he activated the sword origin, he saw a blurry image appear from the sword scroll. It was a thin and tall Dao sect cultivator wearing the attire of the Imperial Thunder sect. He quickly flew over, and before he could see the cultivator's appearance clearly, the image turned black again. This is... A trace of surprise flashed across Ling Yunwu's eyes, and then he looked at Yuan in surprise. This is the image left behind by Old Seven and the others? Yes, not all of them. Yuan said with a smile. They were killed in a hurry, so how could they have the time to leave behind an image? This image was obtained by me, using a secret technique. On air. Ling Yunwu's heart ached. He reached out and pulled Yuan into his embrace. He said in a low voice, "It's all my fault. My negligence not only affected my sword cultivation plan, but also caused your cultivation to be greatly damaged." Hee, it's nothing. Yuan forced a smile like a blue flower and comforted Ling Yunwu. To be able to do something for my husband, I'm willing to pay any price. N1 is really my good wife. Ling Yunwu increased the strength in his hands, as if he wanted to embed Yuan into his body. Yuan gritted her teeth as if she was in pain, but she didn't say anything. The two of them hugged each other for a moment before Yuan said in a low voice, "Husband, we're already an old married couple. Don't be so intimate. If the disciples see this, I'm afraid it won't be good." "You are my wife, who dares to say anything?" Ling Yunwu snorted, but, looking at the sword cultivator disciples who were patrolling the forest at the top of Jinquan Mountain, he still loosened his grip and pulled her hand to fly towards those disciples. "Husband, this image, this concubine has also seen it." Yuan looked at Ling Yunwu and said worriedly, "This golden core cultivator from the Imperial Thunder sect is very powerful. What he used should be the Thunder Control sect's lightning evasion technique. According to the legends, this was the fastest flying technique in the Daybreak continent. My advantage as a sword cultivator was completely gone in front of him. Moreover, you also saw that when he dealt with Old Seven, he didn't use any spells at all and just used close combat." "That's right, this husband also saw it." Ling Yunwu sighed. "This Imperial Thunder sect's cultivator's magic power is so much higher than Old Seven's that he's not afraid of his flying sword at all, or his close combat is even more powerful than us sword cultivators. And it should be the former." Yuan pursed her lips and nodded. "Along the way, this concubine has also been thinking. There are not many people who are stronger than us sword cultivators in close combat. Since this Imperial Thunder sect's cultivator has mastered the lightning evasion technique, he must be a golden core cultivator. The only explanation is that his magic power is profound." Following which, she looked at Ling Yunwu worriedly and said in a low voice, "It's not that this concubine is looking up to him, but the Imperial Thunder sect's flying technique is the nemesis of us sword cultivators. Suddenly, this golden core cultivator got close to us. Husband, you have to be careful." My wife is thinking too much." Ling Yunwu said proudly. "Even if it's a golden core cultivator from the Imperial Thunder sect, how can this husband be afraid of him? Although he can fly faster than this husband, once he gets close to us, how can he be a match for this husband? You have to know the difference between a bright sword swordsman and an illusory sword swordsman." Hearing Ling Yunwu's words, as expected, Yuan sighed in her heart. However, she smiled and said, "This concubine naturally knows. This concubine's husband is a strange man in the sword domain. How can a small golden core cultivator from the Imperial Thunder sect be compared to him? You have a sweet mouth." Ling Yunwu's heart skipped a beat. He stretched out his finger and gently stroked Yuan's face. He smiled and said, "This husband understands your thoughts. This husband will definitely be careful when he sees this guy." Yuan sweetly rubbed her face against Ling Yunwu's hand. She was very attached to it. However, at this moment, the two of them had already flown close to the forest of Mount Quanjin. "All of you stop." Ling Yunwu looked at the destroyed trees under his feet and shouted, "Our expectations might be wrong." When the sword cultivator disciples heard this, they hurriedly flew into the air. After greeting Yuan, Ling Yunwu showed them the image in the sword scroll and said, I reckon that the one who killed our soaring wind sword sect is a golden core cultivator from the Imperial Thunder sect. If I'm not wrong, he should be passing by here and heading to Sky Patrol City. He won't stop here. We have to think of another way. Imperial Thunder sect cultivator? Tall and thin figure? A soaring wind sword sect's bright sword sect disciple suddenly lost his voice and said, Marshal Uncle Ling, this can't be the Imperial Thunder sect cultivator called Terrifying Phoenix, right? Terrifying Phoenix? Yuan frowned and whispered, what kind of cultivator is that? Could it be related to this golden core cultivator? No, Ling Yunwu stared at that disciple and hurriedly laughed. That's just a Foundation establishment disciple with the Phoenix bloodline. He's not the same person as this golden core cultivator. This concubine knows. Yuan smiled and said, this concubine just doesn't know what's going on with this terrifying Phoenix. This person has nothing to do with us. My wife, you don't have to care about who he is. Ling Yunwu said with a smile, my wife has already sent the sword slip over. It's better to go back as soon as possible. Dao sect cultivators can appear at any time. It's quite dangerous. Then he turned and ordered, Yunfei, send your senior sister back. Yes, senior brother Ling. The swordsman, who was also an illusory sword cultivator, cupped his hands and answered. Husband, you have to be careful. Yuan was very obedient. She didn't ask who the Phoenix man was anymore and said, why don't you ask fifth senior brother and the others to come over and help you? Ling Yunwu originally wanted to refuse, but after thinking about it, he nodded and said, that's good too. Yunfei, go back to the sword sect and tell the sword master about this. Or ask the senior brothers in the sect to help, or ask other sword friends who are close to you. In short, find about 10 illusory swordsmen. Only with so many sword friends working together will this golden core cultivator of the Imperial Thunder sect not be able to escape. Chapter 23:32. Yuan was overjoyed when she saw that Ling Yunwu had listened to her suggestion. She reluctantly parted with Ling Yunwu, and a blue flying sword appeared under her feet and flew into the distance. Don't ever mention the horrifying Phoenix again. After Yuan flew far away, Ling Yunwu coldly glared at the disciple and said, fortunately, this is your martial uncle. If it was someone else who wanted to get to the bottom of the matter, how would you answer? Do you want thousands of swordsmen to suffer the wrath of Senior Hua Jian? Yes, I know my mistake. The disciple who drew the sword immediately understood the crux of the matter and hurriedly replied with a bow. However, what you said is not without reason. Ling Yunwu squinted his eyes and looked in the direction of Sky Patrol City. Although the possibility is very small, if it's true, then the disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect are really interesting. Let's go. Ling Yunwu thought for a while and waved his hand. He led the disciples across the mountain range of Golden Spring Mountain and flew in the direction of Sky Patrol City. However, they had just flown for a few miles when they were greeted by a dozen bird cultivators. Each bird cultivator was dragging a small dwarf on their back. Ling Yunwu did not dare to delay. He stopped in midair and cupped his hands. Ling Yunwu of the Soaring Wind Sword sect greets sword friend Feiyu. The bird cultivators stopped in midair. The one in front flapped his wings and glanced sharply at Ling Yunwu. He said coldly, Soaring Wind Sword sect? Your attack area doesn't seem to be here, right? Sword friend Feiyu, I'll let you know that I've lost something, and I need to find it nearby. What is it? It's not a good thing to let you know about it, Ling Yunwu said with a smile. Senior Qi and the others should know about it. Yes. The bird cultivator nodded slightly. I'm In Chao of the Quilted Mountain sect. I'm looking for a cultivator here. Can I help you? Oh? Are there any cultivators from the Taoist sect hiding here? Ling Yunwu asked curiously. I've been searching here for several days, but I didn't find any clues. This old man flew past this place earlier, but I don't know any Dao sect cultivators. Ing Chao nodded and said, "But a few days ago, not far from here, my Flying Feather Sect's fellow disciples and the giants encountered dozens of Dao Sect's Foundation establishment cultivators in a row. Just as they were about to kill these cultivators, the giants sent over another dozen cultivators. One of the tall and thin Foundation establishment cultivators killed 3 of my Flying Feather Sect's fellow disciples and even scared the giants away." "Ah, he scared the giant away?" Ling Yunwu asked curiously, "Is this Foundation establishment cultivator very powerful?" What fellow Taoist Ling doesn't know is that the cultivator used a long staff to bend a giant's mace and send the giant into the ground. His strength is frightening. The giants tremble with fear and don't dare to continue fighting. A strange expression appeared on Ing Chao's face. Ling Yunwu sucked in a breath of cold air. Suddenly, he realized something and hurriedly said, "A tall and thin cultivator? Are you a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect?" This old man doesn't know. Ing Chao shook his head slightly, then turned his head and asked, "Do you know?" The closest bird cultivator was the one who was chased away by Xiaohua. He also shook his head and said, "This subordinate can't tell if he's a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect." Ling Yunwu thought for a moment, then took out the sword slip and played the image. It's him." Although the bird cultivator couldn't see Xiaohua's appearance, Xiaohua's ghost-like flying speed, his tall and thin figure, and the Imperial Thunder Sect's Taoist robe frightened the bird cultivator. His wings trembled non-stop, and the dwarf on his back almost fell from the sky. "Idiot!" Ing Chao cursed, then looked at Ling Yunwu and asked, "Fellow Taoist Ling is also looking for this person." "That's right." Ling Yunwu clenched his teeth. "It's him. It seems that I didn't find the wrong person this time." "Good, since that's the case." Ing Chao nodded and said, "Then this old man will lend you a hand." "Fellow Taoist Feiyu knows where this person is?" Ling Yunwu couldn't believe it. Ing Chao shook his wings and said with a smile, "Although this old man doesn't know, the little friend on my back knows." "Fellow Taoist Uni Cave knows?" Ling Yunwu was puzzled and looked at the dwarf on Ing Chao's back. "That's right, this old man knows." The dwarf proudly raised his neck and explained what he found, then added, "This old man and the others found traces of Taoist sect cultivators here, so they shouldn't be far from here." Good. Ling Yunwu was so excited that he wanted to clap his hands. "This Ling thanks fellow Taoist Uni Cave." "Ha, you're welcome, you're welcome." The dwarf was very happy, and his facial features were squeezed together, as if being recognized by an illusory sword sect cultivator was an extremely amazing thing. "This old man and the others are just scouts." Ing Chao smiled coldly and said, "If this old man's guess is correct, this should be a secret place for Taoist sect cultivators, and it should be the spirit stone vein we're looking for. Behind this old man, there are thousands of sword cultivators waiting. As long as we confirm it, they will immediately come. At that time, not only will we be able to find fellow Taoist Ling's things, we can even divide the large amount of spirit stones." "Good. That's exactly what I want." Ling Yunwu laughed and said, "Then what are we hesitating for? Let's go." "Good. Straightforward." Ing Chao shook his wings, and a trace of a smile flashed in his eyes. His body flew up again, and he carried the dwarf and flew towards the mountain range of Quanjin Mountain. At this time, there was already some snow on Quanjin Mountain, and palm-sized snowflakes fell from the clouds. Moreover, the thick layers of clouds were stacked in the air above Quanjin Mountain, as if a waterfall was pouring down from the sky, and it was even more spectacular. "Jeez!" Ing Chao cried out a few times. More than 10 bird cultivators rushed up the tall Golden Spring mountain range. They ascended in a straight line and gradually approached the cumulus clouds. Whoa! An intense wind whistling sound was emitted from Ing Chao's body. Following which, more than 10 bird cultivators actually crashed into the clouds. In an instant, more than 10 huge holes were opened up in the dark clouds. The dark clouds sprinkled on their bodies, and their feathers were blown up one by one. The dwarves on their backs were already frightened out of their wits, and each of them hugged onto the backs of the bird cultivators, and shrunk their heads deep into their chests, not even daring to look. Looking at their situation, compared to the high spirits of the bird cultivators, it was like the difference between heaven and earth. Ling Yunwu naturally would not follow the bird cultivators into the clouds, and he did not understand the actions of these bird cultivators. Just as he was frowning slightly, more than 10 sounds rang out, and more than 10 bird cultivators once again flew out from the clouds, and separately flew towards the surroundings of Quanjin Mountain. What are these bird cultivators trying to do? A disciple saw Ling Yunwu frowning, and also said in agreement, "Who doesn't know that they are flying high? I'm afraid they want to see the size of Quanjin Mountain. Assign the scouting positions." Ling Yunwu said indifferently, "Let's go, I want to see where Ing Chao is." Ing Chao, with the dwarf on his back, landed in the air several hundred feet away from Ling Yunwu, and still maintained that kind of extreme speed. The dwarf on his back really could not bear this kind of stimulation, and shouted out loudly. With a loud bang, Ing Chao's wings suddenly spread open, and his whole body immediately became as stable as a falling leaf, slowly floating towards the northeast corner of Quanjin Mountain. When he was only several feet away from the forest of Quanjin Mountain, the dwarf let go of his hand and jumped down from Ing Chao's back. It was obvious that the dwarf's legs were somewhat trembling. When the dwarf landed in the forest, he heard a burst of crackling sounds, and the dwarf in Ling Yunwu's eyes suddenly disappeared. Oh, this dwarf knows the 5 elements escape technique. Ling Yunwu suddenly understood why Ing Chao and the other bird cultivators brought the dwarf over. Just now, the dwarf only said that he found the traces of Xiaohua and the others, and did not say that he used the earth derivation technique to avoid Xiaohua's divine sense, so Ling Yunwu was shocked. Flying in front of Ing Chao, Ling Yunwu cupped his hands and said, "Sword friend Ing Chao, this dwarf actually knows the 5 elements escape technique? It is this Ling who is ignorant and inexperienced. It's nothing but a thing that hides underground all day long, not daring to see people." At this time, Ing Chao had already returned to his human form. He was a swordsman with a thin figure and sallow skin. His 2 slender eyes flashed with arrogance from time to time. "If I did not ask them to help find the traces of cultivators, how could this old man let them sit on my back?" Ling Yunwu suddenly understood why the bird cultivators rushed into the sky just now. This Ling also knows some things about the sword domain since childhood, and now I have cultivated to the illusory sword, but this mysterious dwarf, and also this giant, I still do not know much. I wonder if sword friend Feiyu can enlighten me? Ling Yunwu cupped his hands and asked very modestly. "Don't ask me, this old man also does not know." Ing Chao waved his hand disdainfully. "It's nothing more than digging holes in the ground. What do you know about them?" Then he looked at Ling Yunwu and said with a serious expression, "It's not that this old man doesn't want to say, this old man really does not know. If Senior Qi did not call them out, he must know that there are such strange people in my sword domain." Oh, Ling Yunwu was quite disappointed. He looked at the ground and said, "The dwarf's 5 elements escape technique is similar to the Taoist sect's magic star. It should be different." Ing Chao shook his head and said, "This is the dwarf's earth amplification technique. It is said that the dwarf was born with a remarkable ability. It is similar to the giant's infinite strength. However, the dwarf is really too timid, so it is not good to show." Perhaps. Ling Yunwu's eyes did not leave the forest, as if he wanted to see the dwarf's trace. Ing Chao did not speak, and his figure stood there straight. From afar, he looked very proud and aloof. The dwarf had long been frightened out of his wits. When he swore that he would never sit on the bird cultivator's back again, he saw that the distance to the ground was not high, so he immediately jumped down from Ing Chao's back. Although his figure was small, he still crashed into a tree, and even broke a branch. After the dwarf landed on the ground, he did not escape into the depths but instead hid under the soil layer. He let out a long sigh and stayed in a daze for as long as a meal. Only then did his figure sway and escape into the depths of Golden Spring Mountain. Chapter 23:33. As the dwarf moved downwards, his nose twitched. Sometimes he would move left, sometimes he would move right, sometimes he would dive down, sometimes he would move up, as if there really was a path beneath the earth. The dwarf's earth amplification technique was different from Xiao Hua's earth escape technique. There wasn't any brilliance protecting the dwarf's body. As long as the dwarf moved his hands and feet, his body would move. Everything was the same as a mortal walking on the ground. However, after the dwarf stealthily moved for a long time, his body began to slow down. The dwarf's face wasn't alarmed, but rather happy. This proved that the earth here was different from other places, and this was exactly what he was looking for. Sure enough, after another hour, the earth beneath his feet became incomparably hard. The dwarf was no longer able to move even half a step forward. The dwarf looked left and right. Then he followed the hard earth towards the Golden Spring Mountain Range. And within the Golden Spring Mountain Range, in a secluded area within a palace-like cave, Tu Hong and Lan Xan were sitting on two chairs with expressionless faces. In front of the chairs was a square mirror that was 10 feet wide, and the mirror was covered in an earthy yellow color. And in this earthy yellow haze, there was a dark red thread that was like a blood-red thread that was extremely obvious on the lower half of the mirror. Not too far away from this blood-red thread, there were dozens of pitch-black dots that were slowly moving towards it. Great General! Seeing the dots come closer and closer, Lan Xen couldn't help but be moved. She whispered, "This sword cultivator, where did he find such a master? There are actually dozens of them. They actually know the 5-element escape technique." However, Tu Hong didn't seem to hear her. His face was indifferent as he coldly watched those black dots approach the blood-red thread. Seeing Tu Hong not respond, Lan Xian first stopped talking. But after another cup of tea's worth of cultivation, she couldn't help but remind him again, "Great General. They are getting closer and closer. I fear they will discover the spells of my Golden Spring Mountain Range." "Old brother Lan." Tu Hong looked up and sighed, "I have reminded you more than once that the path of a general is to first control your heart. Even if a spiritual mountain collapses in front of you, your complexion won't change. Even if an elk rises to the left, your eyes won't blink. Then, you will be able to control the situation and deal with the enemy. If you can't even handle the tricks of a dozen ghastly clowns, how can you improve your cultivation?" "Alas, Great General, that's easy to say but difficult to do." Lan Xian sighed. This old woman also knows that there is nothing to fear from these dozens of clowns. But what about behind them? That was over 1,000 sword cultivators. Even if my Golden Spring Mountain disciples are not afraid of them, wouldn't my Golden Spring Mountain Spirit Stone Mine be exposed? The Great General's foundation was gone soon? Without Quan Jinshan, the Great General's position in Sky Patrol City is also in jeopardy. Elder brother Lan was worried about this too, but this too mocked elder brother instead. This too is really unbearable. Tu Hong's expression slightly changed. He stood up and cupped his hands. "This too apologizes to elder brother." "Hee, it's nothing." Lan Xian hurriedly blocked Tu Hong. She smiled and said, "This old woman also wants to borrow the strength of the Great General to cultivate to the Golden Core realm. This is also for my own sake." "Hee, old brother Lan, this too knows what you're thinking." Tu Hong took advantage of the situation to sit down. He pointed his finger and said, "Actually, what elder brother is thinking is that Golden Spring Mountain Spirit Stone Mine will be discovered by the sword cultivators. You even vaguely mentioned before that the arrival of the disciples from the 3 countries would attract the attention of the sword cultivators and bring a devastating disaster to my Golden Spring Mountain?" That's right, this old man did say that." Lan Xen nodded without concealing anything. The Dusk Mansion's conference hall is simply a high and mighty place. They blindly give orders. If they didn't send any disciples here, my Golden Spring Mountain would have concealed it well. Even after 1,000 years, we wouldn't have to worry about being discovered by the sword cultivators. But now, how many days has it been since their reinforcements arrived? The sword cultivators have already chased after us. Tu Hong nodded. He didn't comment. Instead, he asked, "Did you find that disciple that randomly broke into the Spirit Stone Mine?" There wasn't any trace of him. Lan Xen found it strange that Tu Hong would suddenly ask this. She shook her head and said, "Also, I didn't see any changes in Golden Spring Mountain spells. I'm afraid that disciple was mistaken." "What kind of rumors can there be among the disciples of the three countries?" Tu Hong suddenly asked. "Rumors?" Lan Xen was puzzled. She blankly said, "No. I didn't hear any rumors." That's good." Tu Hong nodded, a relieved look on his face. He said, "My Golden Spring Mountains array formation is very tight. Since no outsiders have infiltrated, then that means that the unknown figure is a cultivator from within my Golden Spring Mountain. Of course, this is only a guess. Perhaps there isn't. Moreover, there aren't any rumors right now. The sword cultivator's attack is imminent, so who cares if there isn't?" "Yes." Lan Xen still couldn't make sense of this, so she could only nod. "There are many things that I don't want old brother Lan to know." As Tu Hong saw this, he mysteriously smiled and said, "As long as I pass through this great sword battle at Golden Spring Mountain, whether or not Golden Spring Mountain is exposed, it will be harmless to me. The Lord City Lord of Sky Patrol City, he will definitely reward me." "Ah?" Lan Xen was stunned. Then, as if she thought of something, she raised her eyebrows and said, "So, shoot." Tu Hong raised his index finger and placed it on his lips. He smiled and said, "There are some things that cannot be said. Who knows if there is another cultivator that we cannot detect next to this cave? Let's wait for this matter to end. Oh look, the sword cultivators are approaching the barrier." As he said this, Tu Hong pointed his finger at the four sides of the mirror. Sure enough, dozens of small dots were approaching the blood threads from all directions. However, just as these small dots were about to approach the blood threads, they all stopped there. Then, they were like ants on a hot pan. After circling around for a moment, they scattered and started to swim around the blood threads. Lan Xen's face showed a trace of relief. But Tu Hong frowned. After a moment, he whispered, "The earth layer of this spirit stone mine is very solid. It is what my Golden Spring Mountain's defensive array formation relies on, but it is also a place that is easily discovered. Although these sword cultivators cannot go deep into the earth layer, they should already know that there is something strange below." Then, Tu Hong looked up and said, "Old brother Lan, go and inform the disciples of the Dawn Array to kill the sword cultivators near them." Lan Xen hesitated for a moment, then cupped her hands and said, "This old woman will go now." Not long after Lan Xen walked out, she saw that there weren't any superfluous images on the mirror. Instead, the three small dots that were cruising above the blood-red lines suddenly began to accelerate, as if they had been frightened and began to flee in all directions. Seeing the three small dots getting further and further away from the blood threads, Tu Hong was a little surprised, and his face gradually became dignified. When the small dots broke away from the yellow mirror, Tu Hong clapped his hands again, and a misty brilliance emitted from his hands, covering the four sides of the mirror. The mirror began to shrink, and when it had shrunk to the size of a foot, Tu Hong clenched his hand, and a yellow light appeared between his fingers. He tightly grasped the mirror, and as the yellow light lingered, the mirror transformed into the shape of a three rhombus. Chapter 23:34. Quick! Tu Hong shouted. He pointed his finger once more, and a yellow light shot out from the tri-rhombus mirror, turning into a rectangular light screen. Dwarves? So they were dwarves. This old man thought they were sword cultivators. On the light screen, the images of three dwarves were reflected. At this time, Lan Xen also hurried in. She anxiously said, "Hi General, hi General." But as he saw the light screen projected into the air, he stopped, his eyes flashing with anxiety. Tu Hong didn't bother with Lan Xen. Instead, he urged the mirror to slowly rotate. Gradually, the bird cultivator Ing Chao's face also flashed on the light screen. Ing Chao's complexion was as ugly as Lan Xen's. It seemed that after hearing the dwarf's report, he was unable to make a decision. Ing Chao, who was standing on the light screen, was startled. A sharp light flashed in his eyes as he waved his hand, turning it into an eagle's wing that streaked across the air. Immediately, Tu Hong's light screen turned into a blur, destroying Tu Hong's light screen that was moving towards Ling Yunwu. Hee, Tu Hong wasn't surprised. He slapped his hand, hitting the tri-rhombus mirror. The mirror gradually shrank, turning into a small triangle that fell into his hand. Tu Hong looked up at Lan Xen and smiled. "Old brother Lan, you also saw it?" This old man received a report from a disciple that went out to kill a sword cultivator. As soon as I learned that dwarves had appeared, I immediately came back to report. Lan Xen forced a smile. "Dwarves? I don't know how many years it has been since they've appeared in the Huan nation. There are records of dwarves in Sky Patrol City." Tu Hong didn't seem particularly surprised. "But it's not particularly detailed. I didn't look at it carefully. I only know that dwarves are born with the ability to escape through the earth, but I don't know anything else." "Hi, General, you should take a good look." Lan Xen knew that it was useless to say more, but she still complained. "Hi, General, you guard Golden Spring Mountain, you should know more about the Huan nation." Hee, if it weren't for the fact that I wanted to see if there was any secret technique that Yu Meng had, I fear that I wouldn't even know about this. Tu Hong didn't hide his purpose. "Since the dwarves have appeared, the underground defensive array of my Golden Spring Mountain. I'm afraid it won't be as optimistic as we thought." Lan Xen thought for a moment and then said, "Although I don't know whether or not this dwarf can break through this array formation, we still have to take precautions." "Yes, this too naturally knows." Tu Hong nodded, and then his face turned solemn, saying, "Just now, that bird cultivator discovered this two's spying, but I didn't see the face of the sword cultivator beside him. However, it seems that the sword cultivator's cultivation isn't low. He's either a grade 6 brilliant sword or a grade 1 illusory sword. If he's only a grade 1 illusory sword, it'll be troublesome." "Will an illusory sword cultivator appear?" Lan Xen frowned as she heard this. "My Dao Sec's golden core cultivator hasn't even made a move yet, but the sword cultivator's illusory swordsman." As Lan Xen spoke to hear, she stopped. Obviously, she was thinking of Qin Jian. Since Qin Jian, who was at the illusory sword realm, could kill a Dao sect disciple, it wasn't strange for an illusory swordsman to appear here. "Old brother Lan, arrange for some trusted disciples to bring Yu Meng to a safe place." Tu Hong pondered for a moment and ordered. "Ah!" Lan Xen was stunned. However, he was only stunned for a moment. He bowed and said, "This old man understands." But just as he turned around, he stopped and asked in a low voice, "Also, do you want to send several female disciples of the Dao sect to go with her?" This. Tu Hong hesitated for a moment and then nodded. "Old brother Lan, you can arrange it as you see fit. As long as they don't become suspicious, it's fine." "Ha, I asked General to rest assured." Lan Xen turned and quickly walked away. Looking at Lan Xen's departing figure, Tu Hong had a relieved expression on his face. He whispered to himself, "Yu Meng, as long as you are safe, then this too can rest assured. Just you wait. In a few years, you will be able to restore yourself to how you were before. This too will be able to fulfill the blood oath I made in the past." Not to mention Tu Hong's arrangements at Golden Spring Mountain, Ling Yunwu was anxiously waiting at the top of Golden Spring Mountain. All of a sudden, he saw 3 bird-type cultivators carrying 3 dwarves with pale faces flying over. He immediately flew over and shouted, "Have you found any sword cultivators?" Who would have thought that the 3 dwarves would be so scared that their courage had been broken? Their mouths were tightly shut, not saying a single word. Ling Yunwu had no choice but to follow them and land in front of Ying Chao. Ying Chao smiled and asked, "Don't be afraid, don't be afraid. What did you encounter underground?" Reporting to High Master Ying. One of the bird cultivators revealed his human form and cupped his hands across his chest. This disciple heard this dwarf say that he encountered an incomparably hard layer of stone below ground and was unable to go any further. Moreover, as he was looking for a flaw, 2 Dao sect cultivators suddenly appeared and attacked him without saying a single word. "Good." Ying Chao clapped his hands and said, The hard layer of stone must be where the spirit stone vein is located. Dao sect cultivators also appeared. Is there any need to say anything? While they were talking, Ing Chao shouted and looked towards the forest. With a wave of his arm, his figure flew up and shouted, "Quickly call out the other dwarves. There is a golden core cultivator in this spirit stone vein. We will talk after we retreat." "Oh? It really is that bastard." Ling Yunwu's face revealed a sinister expression. "Since that bastard is here, I will turn this terrifying phoenix into a dead chicken man." Immediately after, Ling Yunwu also flew up on his sword and went straight into the sky. He waited for the bird cultivators to fly over with the dwarves before flying away with Ing Chao. Naturally, not long after they flew away, the bird cultivators who flew extremely high returned. They circled above the clouds in the sky, constantly monitoring the movements of Jinquan Mountain. Xiaohua, who was regarded as a dead chicken man by Ling Yunwu, was incomparably free and unfettered at this time. Except for the day when he sneaked into the depths of the spirit stone vein, he was a little cautious and did not go again. For the next few days, he casually said a few words to Ming Mao and then left. He secretly escaped into the depths of the spirit stone vein and used the wishful staff to mine for jade essence. Damn it, this young master has never seen so many spirit stones. No, it's jade essence. Damn it, if every day, every moment, how good would it be to mine jade essence like this? Xiaohua's eyes were shining. The wishful staff in his hand was constantly waving, and every time it was waved, a large or small piece of jade essence would fall. It was immediately absorbed into his space. That jade essence was really a strange thing between heaven and earth. It was incomparably hard, and previously it was perfectly round. Xiaohua could only use the silver-gilded dragon sword to dig out a small piece. Later, he was able to follow the traces of digging and use the wishful staff. Moreover, with each piece of jade essence, Xiaohua had a very familiar feeling. Seems this young master often did this kind of thing before? Is it possible that this young master is a low-level cultivator who mines spirit stones? Xiaohua scratched his head. Or, is it a spirit stone mine worker? Yes, mining jade essence and reclaiming wasteland were so similar, how could Xiaohua not feel familiar? And if possible, after the war, this young master will find an opportunity to go to a spirit stone mine and see if I can mix in as a miner. Not only can I satisfy my cravings, but I can also earn some spirit stones. Unfortunately, just as Xiaohua was imagining his happy life in the future, a 1,000 miles sound transmitting talisman quietly appeared in front of his eyes. What happened to Ming Mao? Which little bastard actually dared to provoke our Imperial Thunder Sect's disciple, and even hindered this young master's wealth? It would be strange if this young master didn't beat you until you were crippled. Xiaohua was angry. When he gave Ming Mao the sound transmitting talisman, he said that unless it was a last resort, she must not look for him. However, when Xiaohua flew back and saw Ming Mao standing there peacefully without any other cultivators beside her, he couldn't help but frown. "Senior sister Ming Mao, did someone disturb you? Where is he?" "Hee, junior brother Xiao, are you that concerned about your senior sister?" Ming Mao said with a smile. "Did you immediately stop cultivating and fly over to protect senior sister as soon as you received the sound transmitting talisman?" Xiaohua was speechless when he saw how narcissistic Ming Mao was, even saying that she had secretly gone out to cultivate. After thinking for a while, he said with a smile, "This little brother has a secret technique to familiarize himself with, but since senior sister Ming Mao has something to do, this little brother can't not come. Actually, if you really have a secret technique to cultivate, you can just tell Captain Chui. He will definitely cultivate with you and won't need to be on guard duty." Ming Mao said with a smile. "Tell him?" Xiaohua curled his lips. "I'm lazy. Don't you know?" Hee, I know you're lazy. "Can I tell him?" Ming Mao felt very good about herself. "You can't let your face affect your cultivation, right?" "No need." Hearing Ming Mao speak so intimately with him, Xiaohua's intuition told him that Fairy Hong Xia's fingernails and Xue Xue's teeth had appeared behind him. He hurriedly waved his hand and said, "Senior sister, why did you suddenly send me a message? Can't I send a message if there's nothing? Ming Mao asked back, shouldn't you be on guard duty with this concubine? Hee, senior sister is joking. Hurry up and say it. This little brother's secret technique is still lacking. Xiaohua saw Ming Mao take a step forward and immediately retreated 2 steps back and said with a smile. Ming Mao pouted and said unhappily, it's nothing much. It's just that Captain Chui's message talisman asked us to return. It seems like they haven't finished patrolling yet. Xiaohua looked around and said curiously, could it be that something happened? Who knows? The message talisman didn't say anything. Ming Mao also shook her head blankly. However, when they returned to the quiet room and heard Cui Hongshan's explanation, Xiaohua was stunned. What? They want to send a few female cultivators to escort a very important item back to Sky Patrol City? Are you kidding me? Not to mention that there are many female cultivators in Quanjin Mountain. Why did they choose 3 female disciples from my Imperial Thunder sect? Furthermore, didn't they want to conceal the information about Quanjin Mountain Spirit Stone Mine? If we escort the item out now, wouldn't it increase the chances of being exposed? But you can't bear to let senior sister Ming Mao go out? Dui Qiming saw that Xiaohua was puzzled and asked so many questions in a row and chuckled. But Xiaohua was speechless. He waved his hand and said, I don't have any opinion. I just feel that it's a little strange. It doesn't matter if it's strange or not. Cui Hongshan ignored Xiaohua's strangeness and waved his hand. This is a good thing for my Imperial Thunder sect. Chapter 23:35. Xiaohua naturally understood that once the 3 female cultivators left the Quanjin Mountain, they would naturally escape from the Quanjin Mountain. Even if the sword cultivator discovered the Quanjin Mountain Spirit Stone Mine, they would not be in any danger. Actually, this place is very safe. Sword cultivators are unlikely to discover this place. Xiaohua looked at Dui Qiming and said, of course, Sky Patrol City is even safer. However, this way the journey will be troublesome. Senior sister still has to be careful. Many thanks, junior brother Xiao. Dui Qiming nodded, while Dui Ling pouted and said unhappily, actually, this concubine feels that staying by Xiaohua's side is the safest. All right, Xiaohua hurriedly asked, senior sister Dui, when are you leaving? Naturally, it's now. Dui Qiming smiled and said, if it wasn't for us returning late from patrol duty, I heard from Hongshan that the disciples of Quanjin Mountain would have let us go. And then senior sister Dui should hurry. Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat as he had a bad feeling. He raised his eyes to look at Cui Hongshan. Although Cui Hongshan only glanced at him and then looked at Dui Qiming, there was also deep worry in his eyes. Then, this concubine is leaving? Dui Qiming looked at Cui Hongshan, and the worst thing was that her bright eyes were also looking at Xiaohua as she whispered, then, this concubine is leaving too. Dui Ling looked like she was about to cry as she said to Xiaohua, Xiaohua, I'm leaving too. Damn it, it seems this has nothing to do with this young master. Xiaohua was about to cry, but at the same time, he also knew that this was the same situation as Foul Mountain. Seeing that they were about to meet in battle, it was even worse than Foul Mountain. He might be able to escape, but it was hard to say whether the Imperial Thunder Sect's first team would be intact. He also could not hurt the two's hearts for no reason, so he could only wave his hand and said, you all should hurry back to Sky Patrol City and pass a message to Yanxi Prefecture's conference hall. What message? Dui Ling was immediately confused by Xiaohua and asked curiously. When Xiaohua saw this, he said in all seriousness, tell them to quickly prepare storage pouches and fill them with spirit stones. I want to kill a lot of sword cultivators in this battle and use their heads to exchange for spirit stones. Dui Ling chuckled. He clenched his fist and punched Xiaohua's shoulder. He rebuked, this concubine was so worried about your lives. Are you really that heartless? The other disciples of the first squad of the Imperial Thunder sect looked a bit uncomfortable. Xiaohua was also helpless, he could neither dodge nor not dodge. Fortunately, when Dui Ling's fist landed, Without waiting for him to speak, a Jinshan Quanjin mountain disciple hurried over. Upon seeing the three of them, he was overjoyed and said, "Three martial uncles, please hurry over with this junior. Martial Uncle Lan and the rest are already waiting anxiously. This junior is here to urge them." Then, the disciple handed a jade slip to Cui Hongshan and said, "Captain Cui, please return the previous jade slip to this junior. This jade slip has been rearranged." Cui Hongshan took the jade slip and returned the jade slip that Lan Xian had given him to the disciple. Then he said, "I'll send you off." Cui Hongshan was reluctant to part with Dui Qimeng. "Captain Cui," the disciple said awkwardly, "you should know that this is a secret. It's best not to let the other disciples know. If you send them off, this Cui understands?" Cui Hongshan nodded. He looked at Dui Qimeng and said, "Be careful on the road." "This concubine understands." "Must also be careful." Dui Qimeng knew that the ones she should warn the most were Cui Hongshan and the others. But she couldn't say such discouraging words. She could only hint, "Don't force yourself. Listen to the opinions of others. This concubine will wait for my husband at Sky Patrol City." The word, husband, awakened Cui Hongshan's tenderness and arrogance. He nodded and didn't say anything else. He watched as Dui Qimeng, Ming Mao, and Dui Ling left with the Jinshan Quanjin mountain disciple. After the three figures disappeared, Cui Hongshan waved his hand and said, "Fellow junior apprentice brothers, it seems that the war is imminent. Our previous thoughts were too naive. Although this place is deep underground, it has already been discovered by the sword cultivators. Let's stop patrolling for now and focus on controlling the array formation. This will give us a chance to save our lives." Zhen Minghui and the others nodded, but they didn't disperse. Cui Hongshan understood. He turned to look at Xiaohua and said indifferently, "What do you think?" "Nothing." Xiaohua waved his hand, "Just don't go too far from this, Xiao." Then Xiaohua turned and walked out. What are you going to do?" Cui Hongshan couldn't help but ask. "This Xiao is naturally going to be on duty." Xiaohua didn't even turn his head. What nonsense! The sword cultivators were about to arrive. No matter who was in charge of Jinshan Quanjin Mountain, there probably wouldn't be a good opportunity to mine more jade essence in the future. Xiaohua definitely needed to mine more jade essence. Thinking about how he just said that he didn't need to be on duty, Cui Hongshan was a bit angry. "Captain Cui, let's hurry up and look at the array formation," Zhen Minghui hurriedly said. "Junior apprentice brother Zhao's cultivation is profound and isn't afraid of this. But we can't always rely on junior apprentice brother Zhao's protection. If we can use a bit more of the array formation's power, we will have a bit more chance of survival." Cui Hongshan clapped his hands and took out a jade slip. He and the other 6 disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect started to comprehend it again. Tu Hong didn't personally come out to arrange the transfer of the crystal coffin. However, his gaze was the same as Cui Hongshan's, very reluctant to part from the crystal coffin that had already been concealed. Moreover, his gaze also fell on Dui Qimeng's face, who was smiling like a flower. A kind of distant memory seemed to have been awakened. Contrary to Cui Hongshan's expectations, and even more contrary to Tu Hong's expectations, another 3 days passed. Unexpectedly, it was very calm and there was no difference from before. If not for the dwarves coming to spy on them, Tu Hong would almost think that Quanjin Mountain was still unknown to the sword cultivators. And Xiaohua was even more happy. In these few days, whenever he had time, he would go up and underground. The rare and unusual jade essence had long been pried away by him. Sometimes, when Xiaohua returned to the quiet room, he couldn't help but laugh out loud. He took out the jade essence and looked at it left and right, unable to bear to put it down. On this day, Xiaohua was still on patrol duty. He was mining for jade essence and selling dog meat under Quanjin Mountain's mineral veins. Suddenly, he heard a series of dong, dong, dong tremors coming from the ground of Quanjin Mountain, almost causing him to raise his wishful staff to tilt. "Granny, the sword cultivators are finally here." Xiaohua hurriedly wanted to put away the wishful staff and escape back to the quiet room. However, when he saw that there was still a large piece of jade essence in front of him, he couldn't help but scratch his face and shouted, "Damn sword cultivators, you actually dare to block your grandpa's wealth. See how grandpa will deal with you." Immediately, a big staff smashed on top of it, and a fist-sized jade essence fell down. Xiaohua stretched out his hand and firmly caught it. Only then did he return to the mineral vein. Chapter 23:36. Dong dong. The sound became increasingly hurried, like footsteps, but also like a deliberate rhythm, smashing onto the ground and knocking on everyone's hearts. Without waiting for Xiaohua to return to his quiet room, he heard a sharp whistle resounding throughout the entire Spring Gold Mountain mine. Groups after groups of Spring Gold Mountain disciples flew out from their respective resting places and flew towards different mountain caves. The thousands of Dao sect disciples who had come as reinforcements were also nervously flying back from their quiet rooms. Although the entire mine was in a mess, it was still in an orderly manner. Xiaohua's appearance did not attract the attention of many people. Cui Hongshan and the rest naturally came out long ago. Seeing Xiaohua return, they did not say much and waved their hands, "Follow this Cui." As he spoke, Cui Hongshan's figure flew up and flew straight towards the space where the Imperial Thunder Sect disciples entered Quanjin Mountain. When they arrived at the rather large space, the situation inside was already different. Not to mention that the atmosphere was very tense. Every Quanjin Mountain disciple's face was tense as they hurriedly commanded the incoming Dao sect disciples. Even the number of caves in the space had increased by a lot. Previously, when Xiaohua and the rest entered, there were 4 to 5 connected tunnels in the space. Now, there were actually 40 to 50 tunnels, filling up the entire space. Every pitch-black cave had a Quanjin Mountain disciple guarding it. Hearing the disciple in the middle shouting out the name of the group that came as reinforcements, the disciple in charge would immediately raise his hand and invite the group of disciples to enter the tunnel through the cave above their heads. Looks like Quanjin Mountain is still different from Chicken Crow Mountain. Seeing such a chaotic situation, Xiaohua was rather confident in his heart as he thought to himself, "This way, the 7 disciples of my Imperial Thunder Sect will be safe." In less than the time it takes to brew a cup of tea, it was the turn of the Imperial Thunder Sect. Hearing that it was the first team of the Imperial Thunder Sect, the innermost disciple immediately raised his hand to signal Cui Hongshan. Cui Hongshan understood and immediately activated his transcendence energy and flew to the front of the pitch-black tunnel. The disciple on guard clapped his hands and took out 7 yellow talismans and handed them to Cui Hongshan. He said, "Team Leader Cui, these are the yellow talismans for the passage of our Mount Quanjin array. Please take them well. With these yellow talismans, you will be able to pass freely within the array for 3 hours. Of course, Captain Cui, please restrain your disciples and don't move around randomly. We have to be in sync and deal with sword cultivators together." "I know." Cui Hongshan took the yellow talisman and nodded. "Please." The disciple stepped aside and raised his hand. "Please." Cui Hongshan also clasped his hands together and raised his head to take a look. His silhouette then flew up and rushed into the tunnel. After that, everyone followed suit, with Xiaohua flying at the back. The tunnel was normal, but what was abnormal was that other than Cui Hongshan and the first team of the Imperial Thunder Sect, no other cultivators entered the tunnel. The cultivators of Jinquan Mountain hurriedly set up their formation. Similarly, outside the mountain range of Jinquan Mountain, a murderous aura soared to the heavens. A few li away from the Golden Spring Mountain, under the rare clear sky, within a radius of a few li, there was a spirit beast that was several zhang tall and 10 zhang long. It was unusually thick and sturdy, and it was approaching the Golden Spring Mountain in unison. The rhythm that was pounding on the ground was produced by these huge beasts. This was not including the trees. The most terrifying thing was that when these spirit beasts were pushed forward by a foot, the huge rocks, gentle slopes and trees in front of them were all destroyed by them. When these huge beasts saw the huge rocks in front of them, they immediately spat out a kind of liquid from an oval, fist-sized hole on their faces and landed on the rocks. Following that, from another small hole under the same hole, an earthen yellow light was emitted. Following that, the huge rocks immediately turned soft and slightly collapsed. By the time the huge beasts kicked a leg that was thicker than a pillar, the huge rocks had already turned into a pile of mud. Needless to say, the trees did not need any liquid. As long as the earthen yellow light swept past them, they would all collapse and turn into wood chips under the huge paws of the huge beasts. Behind the huge beasts, there were thousands of sword cultivators. All of them walked on their swords and their faces were extremely solemn. However, these sword cultivators who looked aloof and arrogant were just like their characters. They kept a distance from the huge beasts, as if they did not want to be associated with them. Looking at the sky above the huge beasts, there were hundreds of bird cultivators hovering in midair and gradually surrounding Jianghu Mountain. A few miles away from the sword cultivators, in midair, Ling Yunwu was leading dozens of sword-nurturing disciples. He looked coldly at them. Beside him, there were also a few illusory sword cultivators and a few high-level beast cultivators. The bird cultivator Ying Chao was also among them. Sword friend Yuan Qing. Ling Yunwu finally could not hold it in and frowned. Your sky-scraping sword sect? With such preparations, aren't you giving the cultivators of Jianghu Mountain a way out? If they escape from the south, then this Ling's matter. Cough cough. That old man dressed in khaki sword robes was Yuan Qing of the sky-scraping sword sect. He coughed and looked at the few sword cultivators who were also illusory sword cultivators. He said, Sword friend Ling, this is not where your sword sect is defending. That's why you have such thoughts. If you were in my place, I'm afraid you wouldn't say that. Sigh, I understand. Ling Yunwu smiled bitterly. Sword friend's arrangement is to make the cultivators have the intention to retreat and give up on the spiritual stone mine of Jianghu Mountain. Then, we sword cultivators can take it down without shedding any blood. Yes, my sky-scraping sword sect and a few other sword sects indeed have such plans. Yuan Qing said without hiding anything. Furthermore, we have also considered that if the so-called terrifying phoenix is really at Jianghu Mountain, he will definitely not escape. He might even take the initiative to fight. Don't forget, he is a golden core cultivator. If he escapes, he will lose all his face. Terrifying phoenix? Ling Yunwu's face showed a trace of displeasure. He said softly, Sword friend Yuan Qing, have never mentioned it before, right? Don't pin this on me. Did I say it was you? Yuan Qing laughed. I don't care if he is a terrifying phoenix or a terrifying chicken. Even if he is a golden core cultivator, he will not be able to escape from my hands today. Then, Yuan Qing turned his head and asked, Sword friendly, is there any problem with this blood calamity beast? A fat beast cultivator stepped forward and answered with a smile. Sword friend Yuan, don't worry. Although my Mystic Valley cannot be compared to the other beast cultivator sects in the sword domain, we are still good at rearing spiritual beasts. This blood calamity beast is good at harming spiritual trees and tormenting the soil. No other spiritual beasts can compare to it. That's right, Ying Chao also laughed in a sharp voice. Even the old me is unfamiliar with this beast. If I had not discussed with the sword friends of the beast cultivators on how to dig out the Dao sect cultivators from underground a few days ago, the old me would not have known that this beast was actually so useful. This beast is meant for other purposes. It is normal that Senior Ying does not know about it. Li Min said respectfully, if not for the fact that these spiritual beasts are scattered all over the sword domain, making it troublesome for me to gather them, the attack would have started a few days ago. I hope it will not delay Senior's plan. Don't mention it. With this beast, we have saved a lot of trouble. I can't thank you enough. Ying Chao replied with a smile. The Valley Master of the Mystic Valley, Li Min, was a small figure in the sword domain. The Mystic Valley was a sect similar to the Spirit Husbandry sect in the country of Shi. In terms of cultivation, it was far inferior to the union of man and beast cultivators. Li Min had always lived in the sword domain with his tail between his legs, doing things that other beast cultivators were not willing to do. Usually, no swordsman thought highly of him. Now that he was suddenly put in an important position, He felt overwhelmed by favor. After we break through the Golden Spring Mountain today, I will make the decision to reward you with some of my beast cultivators' secret techniques. I will let you know the true profoundness of beast cultivators. Ing Chao looked at the fatty and was pleased with himself as he said casually, "Yes, thank you, Senioring." The fatty almost bowed and kowtowed. He did not have the bearing of a valley master. Friend Ling Jianyu, why isn't your fellow sect members here yet? Seeing that the blood calamity beast had already reached the Golden Spring Mountain, Yuan Qing glanced at the talkative beast cultivator and asked, "When the blood calamity beast crosses the mountain and enters the forest of the Golden Spring Mountain, the disciples of the Golden Spring Mountain will come out. When that time comes, the Golden Core cultivator will definitely come out. Do you want to accept the challenge?" "Of course I will accept the challenge." Ling Yunwu laughed coldly, "I will definitely make up for my own mistakes." "Up to you." Yuan Qing expressed that he did not feel any pressure. But Ling Yunwu once again looked anxiously in the direction of the Soaring Wind Sword sect. A few days had already passed. There was no reason for his fellow sect members to not be here. Moreover, if he was alone, he really did not have the confidence to capture that terrifying phoenix. Outside the Golden Spring mountain range, there was an orderly attack. But Tu Hong of the Golden Spring Mountain could no longer sit still. Facing the light screen in front of the triangular magic tool, he asked in disbelief, "Old Brother Lon, this beast, what is it? How come this old man has never heard of it before?" This old man is also ignorant and inexperienced." Lon Xen ruefully smiled and then explained, "There are many beast cultivators in the sword domain. It isn't strange for strange spirit beasts to appear." "It's not strange that it's strange, but there are so many strange spirit beasts that I find strange," Tu Hong said with a bitter taste in his mouth. He did not send out the disciples of the Golden Spring Mountain or the Dao sect because he wanted to use the thick layer of earth on top of the Golden Spring Mountain's defensive array formation as a layer of defense. This would waste the strength of the sword cultivators and beast cultivators, and when they were tired, the cultivators would rush out and take advantage of the situation. But now, it seemed that Tu Hong's calculations were wrong. Moreover, facing so many spirit beasts, facing so many sword cultivators, after this battle, even if the Golden Spring Mountain won, it would still be a bloodbath. And this was only what Tu Hong saw through the magic tool. If he knew that there were still dozens of illusory swordsmen that had yet to arrive, he might not even have any thoughts of winning. Chapter 23:37. Peng Peng, the orderly footsteps that shook the entire ground stopped. It was the thousands of blood calamity beasts that stopped and arrived at the foot of the Golden Spring Mountain. Not all of the blood calamity beasts had a beast cultivator on their backs. However, when a beast cultivator on a blood calamity beast patted the blood calamity beast below him, the surrounding blood calamity beasts all stopped and pointed the black holes on their faces at the stone wall. Obviously, this stone wall was nothing in the eyes of the blood calamity beasts. However, the sword cultivators behind the blood calamity beasts did not give them a chance to show off. Seeing that the blood calamity beasts had stopped, 3 sword cultivators flew to the blood calamity beasts in a group. When the blood calamity beasts saw the sword cultivators approaching, they raised their heads and roared. The black holes on their faces also turned towards the sword cultivators. Hiss! The beast cultivators on the blood calamity beasts pursed their lips and let out a strange hiss. It was like the hiss of a poisonous snake in the grass. When they heard the hiss, all of the blood calamity beasts quietened down and lowered their heads. Rise! The 3 sword cultivators flew below the blood calamity beasts and stretched out their hands to support the blood calamity beasts. They roared in unison and the huge blood calamity beasts slowly flew up towards the top of Jianghu Mountain. Hee, these little fellows. They actually have to form a group of 3. They really lack cultivation. Yuan Qing watched from afar and commented with a smile, "If it was me back then, I would be able to carry a blood calamity beast up the mountain." Of course, which of the swordsmen of Senior Yuan's generation did not train hard? They fought against soul cultivators in the snowy highlands? They are definitely not something that the younger generation can compare to. Fatty Li Min smiled apologetically and said, "Of course, the swordsmen of your sect are also very good. It's all because our disciples are useless and cannot bring these spiritual beasts up the mountain." They actually want to use this layer of soil to block my sword cultivator's attack? The cultivators of the Dao sect really know how to dream. Ying Chao squinted his eyes and saw that his disciples were all in the air. He knew that the cultivators of Jinquan Mountain were all hiding under the soil. Naturally, he could guess Tu Hong's plan. However, Ling Yunwu was a little distracted. Until now, the disciples of the Wind Sword sect had not arrived. Something must have happened. But at that moment, the bird cultivators in the sky became a little disorganized. Ying Chao frowned when he realized that something was wrong. However, before he could frown, the bird cultivators quieted down again. In the direction of the Huan nation, a dozen small dots flew over from afar. "Hee, young friend Ling, your senior brothers are here." Ying Chao glanced around and a divine light flashed in his eyes. He had already seen the black dot clearly. He turned his head and smiled at Ling Yunwu. "All right." Although Ling Yunwu could not see it clearly, he still nodded and smiled. "If that's the case, my sword cultivator will definitely be able to take down Quan Jin Shan. There are more than 10 illusory swordsmen. If we still can't take down Quan Jin Shan, our reputation as sword cultivators will be ruined by the Ling Feng sword sect," Yuan Qing said with a fake smile. Don't worry, Senior Yuan. I'm only looking for that golden core cultivator. As for anything else, I won't ask," Ling Yunwu said with a smile. Yuan Qing seemed to be nodding, but he did not seem to have heard it. His voice was extremely soft, as if he did not care at all. When the illusory swordsman landed on the ground, Ling Yunwu's expression changed drastically. It turned out that Yuan was also among the 10 illusory swordsmen. "Husband." Yuan smiled and was about to speak when she heard Ling Yunwu scolding, "I've already told you. You're only at the 2nd grade of the illusory sword realm. You won't be of any use here. Furthermore, the Chestnut Little Moon Valley is more important. It's our Ling Feng sword sect's matter. Why didn't you listen to me and rushed over?" Yuan was not angry and smiled apologetically. "I know what's more important. Chestnut Little Moon Valley has our Ling Feng sword sect, Chant sword sect, and the other 3 sword sects. Those disciples are enough. Furthermore, sword friend Su Anhua of the Heavy Peak Sword Manor is not in the Sword Manor. Our Ling Feng sword sect only has 2 swordsmen whose flying swords can drill into the ground. I'm afraid these 2 swordsmen will not be able to force the golden core cultivator out of the spirit stone mine. That's what I wanted to help my husband, that's why I rushed over." While Yuan was talking to Ling Yunwu, the other swordsman also greeted Yuan Qing and the other swordsman. Seeing this situation, Ling Yunwu sighed and said, "Sigh, that's the only way. Since you're here, how can I chase you away?" Husband, I'll be careful. Don't worry." Yuan giggled and replied, "Let's go and take a look." Yuan Qing flicked his sleeves and said, "Although the Soaring Wind Sword sect and the other sword friends are here to help, and this Golden Spring Mountain is definitely not a problem, we still have to be careful and not let too many disciples die. Senior Yuan, you go ahead first." Ling Yunwu thought for a moment and said, "Junior will discuss with my senior brothers how to kill our way into Jinquan Mountain. All right, all of you stay back for the time being. Be a hidden backup." Yuan Qing nodded and flew into the air. The other swordsmen and beast cultivators also flew up. At this moment, the Blood Calamity Beast had already landed on the forest of Jinquan Mountain. Thousands of Blood Calamity Beasts once again lined up in a row and slowly pushed forward. In the blink of an eye, the lush green pines and cypresses were turned into wood shavings and scattered across the soil. If the Dao sect cultivators were not scared out of their wits by our huge attack, then their brains must have been damaged by their so-called magic arts. Yuan Qing's figure stopped in midair as he squinted his eyes and coldly said, "Even if the soil of Jinquan Mountain is very thick and even very hard, under the huge palms of the blood calamity beast, it will be destroyed sooner or later. If they don't come out to fight now, could it be that they are waiting until? Unfortunately, before he could finish his sentence, a loud rumbling sound could be heard from the forest of Jianghu Mountain. The entire mountain range shook and many blood calamity beasts lost their balance and fell to the ground. The beast cultivators on their backs also fell to the ground. In an instant, the neat formation of the blood calamity beasts became messy. Many blood calamity beasts even fled in fear. If they were not stepping on the fallen blood calamity beasts, they were stepping on the fallen beast cultivators. It was a complete mess. Fatty Li Min's face was filled with panic as he hurriedly smiled apologetically. "Senior Ing, this is the bad thing about the blood calamity beasts. They are too cowardly and will flee at the slightest sign of danger. And quickly go and pacify them." Ing Chao lightly nodded his head. "Even if the Dao sect cultivators come out, we will have swordsmen in the air to welcome them. Beast cultivators only need to destroy the soil layer." Yes, Junior will go right now." Li Min wiped the sweat off his face as he hurriedly flew into midair. With a clap of his hand, a fist-sized drum appeared. Then he reached into his chest and took out a long white bone. Without hesitation, he hit the drum on the drum. Chapter 23:38. Boom! All the blood calamity beasts that were running around in a panic were stunned. They stood there, not daring to move at all. Dong dong, Li Min knocked twice again. The blood calamity beast began to slowly move to its original position. The blood calamity beast and the beast cultivator disciples who were lying on the ground struggled for a while before they stood up. Dong dong dong. Li Min began to beat the drum rhythmically. The blood calamity beasts began to move forward again. Looking at the forest again, there were dozens of places where the mana started to fluctuate. The surrounding spiritual energy of heaven and earth started to gather. Wang sounds could be heard from dozens of places. Following that, an earthen yellow light appeared. Dozens and hundreds of teams of Golden Spring Mountain disciples and cultivators from the three kingdoms flew out from the light. When the cultivators flew out, they did not stop. They immediately activated the weapons in their hands and smashed them at the blood calamity beasts. These cultivators could not hold back anymore. They even crawled out from their turtle shells. When Yuan Qing saw this, he almost laughed out loud. He pointed his finger and the flying sword under his feet shone with sword light. He had the urge to give it a try. The sword cultivators in the sky who had been on guard all this time naturally reacted to Yuan Qing's thoughts. When they saw the abnormality on the ground, they immediately activated their sword energy. Sword lights of different colors shot towards the ground like fireworks. Even though the sword cultivators' flying swords were fast, they were not as close as the cultivators to the blood calamity beasts. Before the thousands of flying swords could reach half of them, the Dao sect cultivators' weapons had already hit the blood calamity beasts. Roar! Seeing the many weapons flying towards them and tearing apart the dense spiritual chi of heaven and earth around the forest, the blood calamity beasts that were attacked by the weapons roared angrily. The black holes above their heads spat out a thin liquid as they tried their best to defend themselves. However, the cultivator's magic artifact easily dodged the liquid, which was nothing special, and quickly smashed into the blood calamity beast. The blood calamity beasts were huge and it was not easy to dodge. However, when the weapons hit them, the blood calamity beasts' bodies swelled up as if they were inflated. Puff, 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 a series of sounds could be heard. The Dharma artifact had struck the blood calamity beast. To everyone's surprise, the ferocious-looking blood calamity beast only had a frightening body. No matter how big or small the cultivator's magic treasures were, they all pierced through the blood calamity beast's skin and entered its body. Then, the Dharma artifact appeared from the other side of the blood calamity beast's body, dripping with blood. Roar! The injured blood calamity beast roared and its huge body slowly fell to the ground. Blood continuously flowed out from the bloody hole. Looking at the blood calamity beasts that were not attacked by the Dharma artifact, they panicked and scattered in all directions, trying to escape. Ing Chao, who had an extremely ugly expression on his face, came to a realization when he heard the roars that rose and fell throughout the entire mountain range. These roars were not angry roars, but the roars of fear and panic from the blood calamity beast. Li Min, why is this blood disaster beast so weak? Ing Chao could not help but look at Li Min, who was about to fly up into the sky. Fatty Li Min's face was already dripping with sweat and his expression was extremely ugly. He laughed bitterly. Elder Ing, this is how the blood calamity beast is. I have already told Elder Yuan about it before I came here. Sigh. Yuan Qing sighed and laughed bitterly. Of course I know about it. But when I saw how huge the blood calamity beast is, no matter what, it should have some defensive power. But I did not expect it to be so weak. If the blood calamity beast's defensive power was any stronger, I am afraid we would have already known about this spiritual beast's name. Another beast cultivator said thoughtfully. I will go and pacify the blood calamity beast. Li Min had already flown up and the small drum in his hand appeared again. Yuan Qing also said, I will go too. This blood calamity beast is the key to attacking Jinshan Quan. We cannot lose it. I will lead the swordsmen to protect the blood calamity beast. The cultivators of Jinshan Quan were stunned. They did not expect the blood calamity beast to be killed so easily. But, before they could use their Dharma artifacts to attack the other blood calamity beasts, the flying swords of the sword cultivators had already flown above their heads. The cultivators hurriedly threw out their yellow talismans and activated their Dharma artifacts, wanting to block the flying swords of the sword cultivators. At this moment, the strength of different cultivators could be seen. Those who were prepared and had abundant Dharma artifacts and had good control over their Dharma artifacts, when the yellow talismans were used to block the sharpness of the flying swords, their Dharma artifacts were like venomous snakes, showing their viciousness. They swayed their Dharma artifacts, absorbing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to attack the flying swords. Not to mention the lotus flowers, which were the Dharma artifacts of a Kunlun sect female cultivator, blocking the flying swords that streaked across the sky like lightning between the lotus leaves. Not to mention the green clouds in the morning, which gave birth to the vitality of the day and night, which were the Dharma artifacts of a Foundation Establishment middle stage cultivator from Qiqiao sect, which wrapped around the flying swords that were like the scorching sun in the sky. Not to mention the jade snake, which was the Dharma artifacts of a Foundation Establishment early stage cultivator from Taiqing sect, which bared its fangs and brandished its claws as it rushed into the air, swallowing the flying swords that were like pitch-black pellets but were condensed with extremely sharp sword intent. However, a ardent Fire Mountain disciple wearing a blood-red Taoist robe saw that he did not have time to activate his Dharma artifact. His eyebrows furrowed and he raised his hand. The blood-red Taoist robe flew away from his body and turned into a blood cloud above his head, blocking the two flying swords that were about to pierce his head. This was enough to make Yuan Qing, who was flying in the air, feel astonished. The attacks of sword cultivators had always been sharp and incisive. It was the pride of sword cultivators and also the reason why sword cultivators looked down on other cultivators. However, at this moment, the outstanding performance of the Dao sect cultivators made Yuan Qing feel astonished. However, in just a few breaths, waves of heart-wrenching screams rose and fell in the forest. Yuan Qing's divine sense swept over and the corners of his mouth unconsciously curled into a smile. Among the thousands of cultivators that suddenly appeared, only 20% of them made Yuan Qing look at them in a new light. After blocking the sharp flying swords of the sword cultivators, they immediately counterattacked, killing the sword cultivators at the same time as clouds of blood mist appeared. There were also cultivators in the surroundings who were barely able to block the flying swords of the sword cultivators and had to activate their Dharma artifacts and Dharma artifacts in preparation for a counterattack. As for the remaining 40% of cultivators, they were in a disadvantageous position. Not to mention being flustered, even if they activated their Dharma Chi to cast spells or activated their Dharma artifacts, they were like paper in front of the various flying swords of the sword cultivators. Most of the screams that rose and fell in the forest came from the mouths of these cultivators. Blossoms of blood were comparable to the sunset, dyeing the sky and the forest red. Lives were comparable to mayflies, only revealing themselves for a moment before falling into the abyss. Chapter 2339. Dong dong dong. Fatty Li Min's small drum sounded again. Instead of saying that it was a secret skill that he used to pacify the blood calamity beast, it was more appropriate to say that he was pacifying the hundreds of sword cultivators and cultivators who had lost their lives during the battle. The blood calamity beast gradually calmed down, but its eyes were filled with excitement. The blood-red color that flashed across the entire forest was provoking the blood calamity beast's desire. Rumble, pung pung pung, all kinds of sounds and brilliance flashed on the battlefield. Corpses and fresh blood became the main melody in the eyes of the cultivators and swordsmen. Wang, seeing that the swordsmen had gained the upper hand and the beast cultivators swooped down from the sky, the forest emitted an earthy yellow light, and waves of spiritual power appeared. The cultivators who had been fighting hard finally relaxed. They formed a spell with their hands, and with a flash of light, all of them disappeared into the ground. Of course, at this moment, there were still dozens of cultivators who could not dodge the sword cultivators' flying swords, and their corpses were left in the forest. Roar, the blood calamity beasts that had lost a portion of their lives were suddenly excited. They leaped up and rushed toward the corpses that were scattered all over the ground. Blood-red tentacles extended out from the black holes on their faces. These tentacles had jagged protrusions that were about an inch long. These tentacles wrapped around the bloody corpses, and with a slight twitch, the blood calamity beasts tore off large chunks of flesh from the corpses, and with a slight flip, they were thrown into the black holes of the blood calamity beasts. Quick! Stop it! Yuan Qing was furious. Among the corpses, most of them were cultivators, but there were also many sword cultivators. He could not allow the blood calamity beasts to feast on the corpses. Fatty Li Min wiped off the sweat on his forehead again, and his hands quickly hit the small drum. The sonorous sound of the drum resounded across the battlefield. When the blood calamity beasts heard the sound of the drum, they were first agitated, but then they gradually calmed down. However, the blood that filled the battlefield spread in the mouths and minds of the blood calamity beasts. Gradually, the blood overwhelmed the sound of the drum, and the blood calamity beasts became agitated again and rushed toward the corpses. Damn it! Yuan Qing was furious. He waved his hand and a green sword gleam flashed. Two blood disaster beasts that were devouring the sword cultivator's corpse fell to the ground. However, there were more blood calamity beasts than corpses to begin with. As soon as the two blood calamity beasts fell to the ground, the other three blood calamity beasts rushed over and continued to devour the corpses. Yuan Qing waved his hand again, and the three blood calamity beasts fell to the ground again. The 5 blood calamity beast corpses blocked the 2 sword cultivator corpses, and no other blood calamity beast charged forward. However, there were more than 5 blood calamity beasts on the battlefield. How could the corpse of a sword cultivator be the only one on the ground? Moreover, the swordsmen's corpses were piled up together with the cultivators' corpses, and it was hard to tell them apart. The blood calamity beasts tore the corpses apart, and the swordsmen's eyes were filled with blood. Although they were used to seeing blood, many of them were still pale and could not help but vomit. There were also dozens of swordsmen who saw Yuan Qing attacking, and they waved their flying swords to kill the blood calamity beasts. However, after killing a few blood calamity beasts, they realized that it was futile. Just as they were about to think of another way, Fatty Li Min's drumming stopped. He said faintly, "Fellow swordsmen, these blood calamity beasts feed on flesh and blood. Now that they are surrounded by flesh and blood, they are unable to control themselves. I think, if we swordsmen were to encounter such a situation, we might not be able to control ourselves. We still need these blood calamity beasts to contribute to this battle. If we kill them now, the soil layer on Mount Quanjin will not be removed. In my opinion, why don't, after the battle, we kill all these blood calamity beasts to punish them for offending the swordsmen's corpses, and to appease the souls of the swordsmen in heaven?" Li Min's voice was filled with sorrow, and it echoed in the air. When it mixed with the sound of the blood calamity beasts eating the corpses, it made one's heart ache. Fellow swordsmen, use your fastest flying techniques to bring the fallen swordsmen away from the ground, and snatch their corpses from the mouths of the blood calamity beasts. Yuan Qing and Ing Chao flew up at the same time and said loudly, they used their lives to protect the honor of swordsmen. We cannot let their corpses become food for the spiritual beasts. But don't hurt the blood calamity beasts. With them, we will have fewer casualties, and we will be able to kill the cultivators of the Dao sect. Yes, many sword cultivators had tears in their eyes. They responded at the same time, and their figures shot into the forest like lightning. As for the bird cultivators flying in the air, they let out sharp cries as they swooped down. Within Mount Quanjin, Tu Hong narrowed his eyes, coldly staring at the curtain of light. He looked at the bloodstains on the battlefield, and at the corpses in the mouths of the blood calamity beasts. No wonder, we didn't know about these blood calamity beasts. Lan Exen muttered to herself, her face cloudy and uncertain. All of a sudden, Tu Hong, who was sitting upright on the chair, moved. His hands formed a seal, and a ray of light hit the Mitsubishi's magic tool. Immediately, a fiery red ray of light shot out from the magic tool and rushed to all sides of the cave, disappearing without a trace. Great General, do we still want to attack? Lan Exen nearly cried out in alarm. Many of the disciples haven't rested yet, and I fear that they haven't even taken pills yet. How can we attack now? I am inferior to you when it comes to managing the internal affairs of Mount Quanjin. But when it comes to fighting, you are inferior to me. Tu Hong's eyes were cold as he looked at the curtain of light. He faintly replied, at this time, the blood calamity beasts are eating. Presumably, it won't be long before they become 100 times more energetic. My Mount Quanjin will soon be broken through by them. Moreover, the sword cultivators are saving their corpses. This is the best time to sneak attack them. My Mount Quanjin has fewer cultivators than the sword cultivators that came to attack, so we are at a disadvantage. If we don't attack now, when will we? Also, the blood calamity beasts are tearing apart the corpses of my Dao sect cultivators. When my Dao sect disciples see this, how can they not kill these spirit beasts? Tu Hong's eyes twitched as he spoke. Yes, Lan Xian's face was filled with extreme helplessness. But she couldn't help but admit that what Tu Hong said was indeed reasonable. Sure enough, even the sword cultivators and bird cultivators would never have thought that the cultivators that had just escaped would suddenly appear. They were caught off guard, and in several breaths of time, even more sword cultivators fell. At the same time, another 20% of the blood calamity beasts fell into pools of their own blood. Kill! The Dao sect cultivators saw their fellow Daoists that had been full of vigor and vitality a moment ago, but now they had all died miserable deaths and had become food for the spirit beasts. Their eyes were already red with envy. Even if they were to be injured, they would still kill these evil beasts that disturbed the peace of the dead. Chapter 2340. Seeing that the formation of the sword cultivators was a little messy, Yuan Qing transmitted his voice loudly. Disciples who are pregnant with swords snatch the corpses of the swordsmen. Disciples who are drawing their swords kill the cultivators. This sentence woke up the swarm of sword cultivators. In less than 10 minutes, the situation on the battlefield was reversed and the sword cultivators gained the upper hand again. Fortunately, at this moment, the cultivator's formation lit up again and brought the cultivator, whose magic power had been depleted, into the formation. Seeing that the cultivators were defeated, the sword cultivators moved again. Half of the sword cultivators stood on their flying swords and stared at the ground with bright eyes, guarding against the sneak attack of the cultivators. The other half of the sword cultivators rushed into the group of blood calamity beasts and snatched the corpses of the fallen swordsmen. Sigh! Ing Chao stood straight in the air and his face was expressionless. However, there was a hint of sympathy in his eyes as he sighed. I just came into contact with the cultivators and this battle has turned out like this. This is really beyond my expectations. The battle is not something that we can compare to. Yuan Qing looked at the pool of blood on the ground and said coldly, even if we were to enter with the cultivation of the illusory sword, there is a possibility of death. However, this situation has indeed exceeded our expectations. But what is the result? The warriors of the sword region far surpass the cultivators of the Dao sect. If we can't kill the cultivators, how can we face our elders? Ying Chao laughed coldly. When we break through the defense of Mount Quanjin, I will bathe Mount Quanjin in blood. In the next 4 hours, the cultivators of the Dao sect did not come and the blood calamity beasts were full. Under the command of the beast cultivators of the Maze Valley, they raised their huge palms and continued to break through the forest of Mount Quanjin. The corpses of the cultivators that were not swallowed turned into blood under their feet and seeped into the ground. All the sword cultivators were flying in the air, and their eyes were filled with anger and hatred. They looked at the blood calamity beasts and the ground of Mount Quanjin. The sword radiance around them was breathing and expanding and contracting from time to time. They were deliberately preparing to welcome the cultivators' attack. The corpses of cultivators and swordsmen were piled up under the blood calamity beasts' feet. How could they tell the difference when they stepped on the blood at the same time? The tentacles in the blood calamity beast's black hole were strange as well. Just one of them was enough to tear the flesh of several corpses apart. Even though the swordsman was fast and the bird cultivator's eyesight was sharp, they still couldn't tell. Therefore, only the disciples who were pregnant with swords managed to snatch dozens of intact corpses of the swordsmen. The rest had all turned into meat paste and blended together with the corpses of the cultivators and the black soil. Needless to say, even if the blood disaster beast completely destroyed the forest, this place would definitely become a thriving place in the next year or the year after that. Perhaps, the cycle of prosperity and decline, the cycle of life and death, was between destruction and rebirth? As the blood calamity beast pushed forward inch by inch, the color of the forest gradually faded away, revealing the snow-covered ground. However, the passageway that Xiao Hua and the rest used to enter the underground was not revealed, as it had already been destroyed by the disciples of Jinshan Mountain. Great General, what should we do now? Lan Xen frowned as she watched the blood disaster beast destroy the forest. This sword cultivator actually destroyed the entire forest of Jinshan Mountain. It seems that they have the intention of completely taking over Jinshan Mountain. Tu Hong was also in an extremely difficult position. It wasn't that he didn't have a backup plan, but this was just the beginning. This blood disaster beast didn't have any attack power, and yet he had to take out such a powerful backup plan. If the sword cultivator made another move, wouldn't he have no strength to fight back? Tu Hong's eyebrows tightened, as if they were twisted together. He waved his hand and sneered, "The sword cultivator has the blood disaster beast, but my Dao sect has the mortal body of a cultivator. Now that things have reached this point, there is no need to speak of mercy or tolerance. Even if you are not a disciple of my Jinshan Mountain, you should still have the awareness that you will perish here." Lan Xian nodded. Just as she was about to speak, there was some movement outside the cave. "Who is it?" Tu Hong's face was as cold as ice. He waved his hand and a brilliant light shot towards the cave entrance. Immediately, several cultivators rushed into the cave, accompanied by a Jinshan Mountain disciple. "Great General!" The disciple's face was filled with panic. He nervously said, This subordinate was unable to... It was these Rocky Border sect fellow Taoists that forced this subordinate. Humph, these Rocky Border sect disciples don't know the rules of my Jinshan Mountain, but you do. Tu Hong coldly said, "What is the crime of trespassing into the commander's tent during a great battle?" The disciple's face was ashen. But at this time, he stiffened his neck and replied, "Reporting to the great general, this subordinate understands. During a great battle, trespassing into the commander's tent is punishable by death." As long as you know." Tu Hong nodded, "Then you should know what to do." "Yes, this subordinate understands." The disciple bowed and turned to leave. Senior 2. A middle foundation establishment cultivator leading the group coldly said, We came to reinforce Jinshan Mountain, but we didn't come to watch Senior Tu and his subordinates put on a show. What business do you have? Tu Hong lightly asked, not bothering to explain. We Dao sect disciples came to Jinshan Mountain as reinforcements because we were prepared to put our lives on the line. However, if we were to die in Jinshan Mountain, our corpses must be left behind and brought back to Rocky Border sect. But what about Senior Tu's actions? Other sword cultivators still know to send disciples to retrieve the corpses of their fallen disciples. But the corpses of our Dao sect cultivators were left on the ground for no reason. Not only did they not retrieve them, they were trampled on by the giant beast and were even eaten alive by the giant beast. Senior Tu, such a method, isn't it chilling the hearts of our reinforcements? Are you waiting for me to finish? Tu Hong nodded and asked. Also, the yellow talismans on our bodies, although we can enter and exit the array, if the array is not opened, we can't enter the array at all. How is this different from not having any yellow talismans? If the array is not opened, wouldn't we have to fight the sword cultivators to the death? Is there anything else? Tu Hong still nodded. At this moment, a deep voice sounded, reporting to the great general, the disciples who violated the military order have been beheaded. Bring it in. Tu Hong's eyebrows did not raise as he casually replied. Following the sound of that voice, a wave of firm footsteps came in. A robust qi refining cultivator walked in with a vermilion-painted board in his hand. On the board was a large head. It was none other than the Foundation Establishment cultivator who went out to receive punishment. Seeing that the blood on the board had yet to dry and the two eyes on the head had yet to close, the Rocky Border sect disciples could not help but exclaim. They did not expect that Tu Hong was actually serious. Chapter 23:41. Brother! Tu Hong stepped forward and bowed deeply. He stretched out his right hand and slowly placed it on his head. This too is untalented and can only bring you to this point. From now on, you have to walk your own path. Following Tu Hong's right hand, his head was filled with hatred. He hated that he couldn't die on the battlefield and closed his eyes. Senior Tu, there's no need to do this. The leader of the Rock Border sect disciples said with regret, this fellow Taoist was forced to come here by us. Tu Hong suddenly turned his head and swept his gaze across the disciples. Even the middle-stage Foundation Establishment disciples were startled. A layer of goosebumps appeared on their bodies and they almost took half a step back. Their true essence flowed rapidly as if guarding against Tu Hong. But Tu Hong didn't make any move. He waved his hand and said, take this brother's head and bury it with his corpse. Then tell those who want to go out and snatch their brother's corpse that it's a small matter to snatch the corpse, but it's a big matter to protect Jinshan Mountain. No matter where our brother's corpse is, our heart is to bury them in their graves. Yes, this subordinate understands. The Qi refinement disciples' tiger-like eyes glistened with tears. Also, Tu Hong raised his head and said, if this Tu falls here, you all must not collect my corpse. Let this Tu's flesh and blood coexist with this Jinshan Mountain. The Qi refinement disciple puffed out his chest and said loudly. He turned around and left. After watching the Qi refining disciple leave, the disciples of the Rocky Border sect looked at each other in dismay. Although they had thought of many countermeasures and hypothesized many of Tu Hong's actions, but this move was something they could never have imagined even in their wildest dreams. Immediately, the leader of the Rock Border sect disciples bowed and said, Senior Tu, this junior was wrong. This is really a big mistake. Please punish us. As soon as he said this, the other disciples hurriedly bowed and shouted, this junior was wrong, please punish us. Tu Hong's face that was always calm like water had a trace of a smile. He walked steadily to the front of the disciples and reached out to help them up. He said, you are wrong, but you are also not wrong. The fault lies in the fact that sword cultivators invaded my country of Shi and stepped into the territory of my Sky Patrol city. Seeing that Tu Hong had no intention of killing them, The disciples of the Rock Border sect felt relieved and smiled apologetically. Although all of you are in the wrong, but all of you are not my Spring Gene Mountain's disciples, and do not understand my Spring Gene Mountain's military rules. This is also my fault. The smile on Tu Hong's face gradually disappeared, and he continued, those who don't know can't be blamed, even in my Quanjin Mountain. Now that we're in the middle of a war, this old man won't say anything unnecessary. Go and guard the formation well. Act according to this old man's orders. If anyone slacks off on the military rules, this old man won't show any mercy. Yes, this junior understands. The hearts of several Rock Border sect disciples trembled as they bowed in salute. Someone come, bring back the fellow Taoists who came as reinforcements. Lan Xian hurriedly shouted out. After the patrolling disciples took away the several Rocky Edge faction disciples, Lan Xian looked at Tu Hong and then stared at the light screen. She said in a soft voice, like this, the cultivators of the various sects should be able to calm down. But how many illusory swordsmen have come? If there are too many, then my Spring Gene Mountain's array formation won't be able to block them. It was as if what happened just now was nothing more than an ordinary scene. The lives of the Spring Gene Mountain disciples were like duckweeds floating in the wild. According to this old man's estimate, there shouldn't be more than 5 illusory swordsmen. According to the intelligence, there shouldn't be more than 4 sword sects attacking Spring Gene Mountain, and each sword sect should have an illusory sword. They shouldn't have come out in full force. Tu Hong didn't care about this. He sneered. In fact, this old man would rather have more sword cultivators come. The more illusory swordsmen there are, this old man will become more famous. Although Lan Xian didn't understand Tu Hong's plan, she still replied. What this old man is worried about is that Yu Meng and the others have been gone for a long time and there still hasn't been any news from them. I don't know if they've reached Sky Patrol City yet. As he spoke of Yu Meng, Tu Hong's face revealed a trace of worry. The sword cultivator's attention is all on the Spirit Stone Mine. They won't be distracted by any random cultivators. Lord General, please rest assured. What could Lan Xian say? She could only comfort Tu Hong. What about the other disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect? Lan Xian seemed to think of something. She asked with some doubt, I don't think I've seen them go out to meet the enemy? Tu Hong didn't answer. He pointed at the light screen and said, the giant beasts are tired. Should we attack them again? What the Lord General says is right. This is the best time to kill these giant beasts. Lan Xian tactfully didn't mention it again. It was as if the disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect had already died. The disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect naturally wouldn't die. They followed the instructions in the Jade Slip and entered the tunnel. Then, they flew along the spacious tunnel. However, after flying for a moment, the tunnel turned downwards and they flew along several forks. Luckily, the Jade Slip was marked so Cui Hongshan wasn't afraid of getting lost. He picked one of the paths and continued down. After flying like this for the time it took to eat a meal, they arrived at a large abandoned cave. Oh! Xiaohua's eyes swept over the cave, a bit surprised in his heart. It was obvious that there were many exits in the cave. Not only that, but the inside of the cave was filled with dim bright flower stones. In the shadows where the light couldn't reach, there were several small thumb-sized spirit stones scattered about. This was definitely a spirit stone mine that had been excavated a long time ago. It's here. Cui Hongshan looked at the Jade Slip and waved his hand. Let's sit down according to the formation we comprehended before. I will wait for Senior Tu's instructions. We will stimulate our magic power and support the array formation with the disciples of Goldspring Mountain and the other disciples. It's here? Xiaohua almost wanted to hold his stomach and laugh out loud. This was already the depths of the Spirit Stone Mine. The surrounding soil layer was extremely dense and his divine sense couldn't reach too far. However, although he couldn't see too far, Xiaohua would be the first to not believe that this was just a corner of the array formation and that the disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect could transmit their magic power to the ground from here. And it's here. Cui Hongshan saw the disdain on Xiao Hua's face and secretly frowned. Then he said arrogantly, "This is just a corner of Gold Spring Mountain's defensive array formation. Naturally, it's hidden. If you don't understand, then don't say any more. We will follow Senior Two's instructions, and just move." Xiao Hua saw that everyone had sat down. It was actually an ordinary array formation planning method. He blinked his eyes and flew up again. "Xiao Hua, what are you doing?" Cui Hongshan immediately shouted. "Xiao Hua will look around." Xiao Hua didn't stop and immediately flew towards one of the passages above the cave. Chapter 23:42. Cui Hongshan clenched his teeth and said in a low voice, "Xiao Hua, I know that your cultivation is high and your strength is comparable to early gold core. However, this is a battle with a sword cultivator. Even a true gold core cultivator like Senior Tu Hong wouldn't dare to be careless. They all have to focus on the arrangement of troops, focus on the group battle, focus on the array to defend against the enemy. You have to look at the big picture." Cui Hongshan's voice became softer and softer. Because Xiao Hua had already flown away, who could he say it to? Sigh. Cui Hongshan felt somewhat powerless. Seeing that the other 5 Imperial Thunder Sect disciples were all sitting obediently with their eyes closed, he also sighed and sat down. Cui Hongshan wanted to calm his heart and regulate his breathing. However, no matter what, he couldn't enter the ethereal state. Helpless, he could only open his eyes. However, when he opened his eyes, he almost jumped up in fright. He saw Xiao Hua's slender face swaying in front of his eyes. "When did you return?" Cui Hongshan asked in shock. "I came a long time ago." Xiao Hua said weakly, "I have already looked around. Don't talk about other sect disciples, there isn't even an ant. What do you think we should do?" "What should we do?" "Naturally we should wait," Cui Hongshan said without hesitation. "This place is under the Spirit Stone Mine. It has nothing to do with the defensive array of Golden Spring Mountain." Xiao Hua said angrily, "Look at the Jade Scroll yourself. Did you make a mistake?" "This." Cui Hongshan took out the Jade Scroll doubtfully. He looked at it again and then handed it to Xiao Hua. "I didn't make a mistake. Why don't you look at it yourself?" "I'm not looking." Xiao Hua turned his head and said, "Senior brother Minghui, look again." Cui Hongshan ignored Xiao Hua and handed the Jade Scroll to Zhen Minghui. When Zhen Minghui looked carefully, Cui Hongshan asked with interest, "Xiao Hua, how do you know that this is under the Spirit Stone Mine?" "I just know." "What about it?" Xiao Hua said disdainfully. "Have you been here before?" Cui Hongshan narrowed his eyes and looked at Xiao Hua. "What? Did Ming Mao tell you about this?" Xiao Hua asked. Ming Mao never told me. But this Cui can guess." Cui Hongshan secretly despised in his heart, a rogue cultivator as expected of a rogue cultivator. You don't have to care whether this Xiao came here or not. Think about it. Why did Tu Hong suddenly want to transfer 3 female disciples of my Imperial Thunder Sect away from Golden Spring Mountain? Furthermore, he placed us here? What are his intentions? Xiao Hua asked. Senior Tu Hong is a golden core cultivator and he is in charge of Golden Spring Mountain. He is a dignified and magnanimous person. Yes, it can even be said that he has a good command over his army. He is a role model for us cultivators to emulate. Cui Hongshan held Tu Hong in high esteem and said with a smile, "What could he possibly covet about the disciples of my Imperial Thunder Sect? If there's anything, it's that he's taking pity on the juniors and transferring Chi Meng and the others back to Sky Patrol City. He's taking care of their lives and placing us under the Spirit Stone Vein to prevent us from fighting against sword cultivators." This. Xiao Hua was also speechless. What Cui Hongshan said was indeed reasonable. He couldn't say anything to refute it. However, Xiao Hua didn't believe that Senior Tu Hong, whom he had never met before, would be so kind. Fellow Taoist Cui, is this Senior Tu your relative? Xiao Hua suddenly realized. Nonsense. Cui Hongshan said coldly, "This is the first time I've seen him at Golden Spring Mountain. I've never seen him before. Furthermore, don't make any dirty guesses." Senior Tu Hong's character is noble and pure. It's not something you can measure. Hehe, Xiaohua looked at Cui Hongshan and almost thought that he was Tu Hong's illegitimate son. Junior brother Xiao. At this moment, Zhen Minghui said, Captain Cui is right. We should be waiting for orders here. Alright. Xiaohua stretched and threw a message talisman. Since you believe so much, then you can wait here. If you have any orders, fellow Taoist Cui can call me back at any time. After saying that, Xiaohua's figure swayed and flew towards the cave entrance. What are you going to do? Cui Hongshan said anxiously as he took the message talisman. I'm sleepy. I'm going to have a wet dream. Xiaohua's voice came from the cave entrance. This bastard. Seeing Xiaohua leave, Cui Hongshan was furious, but he also felt like he had lost something to rely on. He could only pinch the message talisman, hoping that Xiaohua wouldn't fool him. This is clearly below the jade essence. If I hadn't passed by here before, how would I know? Xiaohua left the cave and flew for a while. Looking at the familiar tunnel, he made a hand seal and entered the stone wall, heading towards the jade essence again. Time was tight and the mission was difficult. Xiaohua had to take advantage of the fact that the sword cultivators hadn't reached here and excavate as many jade essences as possible. He definitely couldn't leave any extra jade essences for the sword cultivators. This was Xiaohua's only thought in this dangerous situation. Xiaohua was so selfless, so considerate of the Dao sect's future. The day and night passed quickly. Everyone was working hard, whether it was the sword cultivators who were on guard in the air, the Dao sect cultivators who risked their lives to kill the blood calamity beasts, or even Xiaohua who was excavating selflessly. Naturally, everyone's harvest was bountiful. Less than 10% of the blood calamity beasts were left, and they were far less imposing than before. Similarly, less than 30% of the Golden Spring Mountain Forest had been destroyed by the blood calamity beasts, and a piece of flat soil was revealed from the forest. The sword cultivators understood at a glance that this place had been tampered with by the Dao sect. However, the soil was drenched in blood and flesh, and a bloody stench permeated the mountain range. Amidst this bloody stench, there was a strange sense of sorrow. Enough! Yuan Qing waved his hand and said to Li Min with satisfaction, Take away all the blood calamity beasts in your Confusion Valley. They are the foundation of your Confusion Valley. If they are all consumed by us, what will happen to your Confusion Valley in the future? However, Li Min shook his head and said sincerely, Senior Yuan, I have already said that these blood calamity beasts have eaten the flesh of our warriors. They cannot be allowed to exist in this world. If Senior Yuan feels that these blood calamity beasts are no longer of any use, I will instruct my disciples to kill all these blood calamity beasts. Leave none alive. Valley Masterly. Ying Chao laughed. The blood calamity beasts are just stupid beasts without intelligence. How can they resist their natural appetite? Just now, your words have already made your intentions clear. We from the Sword region will definitely not blame these blood calamity beasts and your Confusion Valley. Don't worry. Yes, that's right. Yuan Qing nodded. These blood calamity beasts are also one of the great contributors in this battle. We do not have any rewards, so those can be considered as offsetting. Yes, I understand. Li Min nodded. Do we need to destroy the remaining 30% of the forest? Yes, that's enough. Yuan Qing nodded. Take away the blood calamity beasts. I have other methods. Yes. When Li Min heard that, he flew up and raised the small drum in his hand once again. Then his left and right hands hit the drum. Instantly, a sonorous and powerful drum sound that was filled with sorrow, pity, reluctance, and even determination resounded through the entire Jin Quan Mountain. It was as if he was paying tribute to the souls of the swordsmen who had passed away earlier, so that they could continue on their journey. Oh, Ying Chao's heart sank when he heard that. He looked at Li Min in confusion. He saw that Li Min was hitting the drum with a pale face and tears in his eyes. Ying Chao immediately understood and looked at Yuan Qing. As expected, Yuan Qing was also enlightened. The two of them looked at each other and their eyes were filled with respect. They looked at the forest in front of Quanjin Mountain that had yet to be destroyed. Hundreds of blood calamity beasts sat down with the drum sound and bowed respectfully on the ground. Of the 10 blood calamity beasts that had been guarding the blood calamity beasts, there weren't many left. They leapt up from the backs of the blood calamity beasts and flew towards different blood calamity beasts. Every time they landed on a blood calamity beast, they would reach out and throw a fist-sized pill into its mouth. As each pill fell into the mouth of a blood calamity beast, that blood calamity beast would emit a low hiss and then lie down, motionless. Hiss. All of the swordsmen that were standing guard in the air also understood the actions of the Lost Valley. They couldn't help but feel a sense of respect in their hearts, and all of their previous thoughts vanished into thin air. Oh? Tu Hong's eyes also saw the situation on the light screen. His eyes flashed with a smile. He pointed a finger and said, "It seems that the master of these blood calamity beasts is quite tactful. If he doesn't act decisively now, then after this battle, I fear that thousands of swordsmen will come knocking on his door. If he acts decisively today, there will be some losses, but he won't have any future burdens. He will also gain the respect of others." Yes, what the general says is true. Lan Xen nodded, but she was still puzzled. There's still 30% of the forest that hasn't been destroyed. Also, if my Golden Spring Mountains array formation isn't activated, then there should be several miles of earth covering it. Sword cultivators, there shouldn't be too many of them that choose to escape into the earth, right? Let's wait and see. Tu Hong waved his hand and looked back at the light screen. The sword cultivators didn't make Tu Hong wait for long. Yuan Qing stood in the air and turned to a tall old man. He smiled and said, "Old brother Zhan, the rest is up to you." With Valley Master Li Min laying the groundwork, it will be much easier for my Wild Beast Villa. This old man was War Sword of Wild Beast Villa. I wouldn't dare. Li Min had already put away his small drum. He respectfully replied, "This junior has long admired Senior War Sword of Wild Beast Villa. I will wait and see." Good. War Sword clapped his hands. Your Lost Valley's blood calamity beasts are indeed unexpected, but how can my Wild Beast Villa allow you to monopolize the limelight? Come, take a look at the methods of my Wild Beast Villa. As he spoke, the War Sword General waved his hand. Hundreds of Wild Beast Villa disciples, who were dressed in black and had their faces covered, who had been standing in the distance, flew up and flew towards the soil that the blood calamity beast had destroyed. Chapter 23:43. Once the hundreds of disciples had lined up, he reached into his bosom and took out a flat object which he placed in his mouth. Then he took out a black bag from his waist. When he opened the bag, a bunch of black objects flew out from the bag. When the crowd looked carefully, they saw that they were flying objects the size of a fist. The flying object looked like a gourd. It had a small head the size of a pinky finger and a round body the size of a fist. On both sides of the body, there were two 1-inch-long transparent wings. Wang wang, as the flying object flew out, the buzzing sound got louder and louder. Gradually, the pitch-black flying object had covered the entire sky above Jianghu Mountain. Spirit swallowing bugs? Li Min was shocked. How is this possible? Hee, of course it's impossible. Zhang Jian laughed. If our crazy beast mountain villa had so many spirit-swallowing bugs, would we need to sacrifice so many swordsmen? Yes, it's my fault. Li Min smiled apologetically. It seems that there are some differences between them and the spirit-swallowing bugs. It's more than just some differences. There's a huge difference. Zhang Jian laughed and did not explain further. He waved his hand and said, "Boy, release the earth-swallowing bugs and let them have some fun." Yes, the disciples of the crazy beast mountain villa puffed up their cheeks, but no sound was heard. The so-called earth-swallowing bugs split into different groups and pounced on the ground, covering the soil densely. Earth-swallowing bugs? Li Min understood. Actually it's nothing. The battle sword looked at Ing Chao and said with a smile, "Thousands of years ago, my wild beast mountain villa obtained a secret method. I wanted to cultivate spirit-swallowing bugs, but I didn't manage to cultivate the spirit-swallowing bugs. Instead, I cultivated some useless things that can eat soil. We call them earth-swallowing bugs. These things are really useless. After all, they are the hard work of our crazy beast mountain villa for generations. We can't bear to destroy them. Previously, when we heard Senior Yuan mention that the spiritual stone mine in Jinquan Mountain was hidden underground, our villa master thought of this thing. Ha! Everything has its nemesis. Ying Chao laughed and said, "Exactly. Everything in the world is bound to be restrained by something." Yuan Qing also nodded. Then, as if he had thought of something, he said in a low voice, "Senior Ying, the head of the Xuanyan sect in the country of Xi is Fairy Yingzhua. Her name is the same as yours. Are you her natural nemesis? Let me see which day you've cursed me." Damn it, hearing Yuan Qing mention Fairy Yingzhua for no reason, a bitter smile appeared on Ying Chao's face. I can't wait to jinx her one day. Even every day. But I can't compare to a nascent soul cultivator. That old woman sent me a message 100 years ago. Oh? There was such a thing? Could it be that she has taken a liking to you? Yuan Qing's eyes lit up. I don't like her. Ying Chao shook his head. That old hag wants me to change my name. Haha, Yuan Qing laughed. Even Zhang Jian, Li Min, and the others couldn't help but smile. The earth-devouring insects lived up to their name. In just the time it took to brew a cup of tea, the several mu of land that was covered with spirit insects had clearly caved in. Good boy. These earth-devouring insects are actually so fierce. If these were real spirit-devouring insects, what would we do? Li Min whispered as he wiped the sweat from his forehead. Hee, Brother Li, this time you've made a mistake. Zhang Jian laughed. Although these insects are innately earth-devouring insects, they aren't as fierce as you see. Oh, Li Min suddenly realized, and this is the acid that the blood calamity beast spewed out. Exactly. Zhang Jian clapped his hands. Didn't I just say it? It's all because of your Maze Valley that I'm here. General, we can only accept the challenge. Lan Exen whispered from within Gold Spring Mountain. Tell this disciple to take out the earth-firm talisman that I've been refining for many years. Tu Hong nodded as he heard this. I already knew that this day would come. The earth-firm talisman is for today. Lan Exen nodded and hurried out. Tu Hong's eyes didn't leave the light screen. Although the earth-devouring insects were fierce and had already swallowed up over a foot of the earth, Tu Hong didn't seem to panic at all. Between the layers of earth, there were flashes of brilliance. This was the sign that Gold Spring Mountain's disciples were about to attack. The sword cultivators that had been on guard all this time suddenly tightened their faces. They each urged their flying swords to attack the areas that they had already allocated. Kachacha. Instantly, the cultivators of Jin Shan sect appeared, and the flying swords of the sword cultivators also attacked. Magic tools and magic treasures clashed with each other, and following that, it was the clashing of the flesh and magic tools. The flesh and bones clashed with the flying swords. Of course, there were careful defenses, of course, there were quick dodges, but there were sharp weapons on all sides of the body, front and back were all ferocious. Even if one could dodge it once, how could one dodge it a second time? In just a moment, miserable screams sounded again. Everywhere, there were lives being reaped. Just as both sides were in the midst of a fierce battle, the layers of earth in the array flashed again. Hundreds of Gold Spring Mountain's disciples suddenly flew out from the array. As soon as they appeared on the battlefield, they didn't care about the other cultivators. Instead, they quickly flew towards the several acres of earth-devouring insects. Without waiting for Yuan Qing and the other sword cultivators to command, the sword cultivators that were extremely close to them immediately flew up to block them. However, this group of Gold Spring Mountain's disciples didn't even bother to fight. Their bodies flew extremely fast. Both of their hands slapped their storage bags and yellow talismans flew out. They turned into fist-sized balls of light that fell in the middle of the earth-devouring insects. Quick, block them. Yuan Qing and the others shouted. When the balls of light fell, the earth in the radius of a few feet immediately flashed with yellow brilliance. When the brilliance was slightly extinguished, it suddenly turned yellow as well. It was actually as hard as a piece of crystal. What shocked the sword cultivators the most was that when the yellow brilliance touched the earth-devouring insects, the earth-devouring insects also started to turn yellow. Following that, the earth-devouring insects stopped moving. It was completely similar to a fist-sized lump of earth. Not good. Zhang Jian was shocked. He anxiously transmitted his voice. The wild beast manners disciples who were protected by the swordsman immediately blew the soundless thing. The earth-devouring insects that weren't hit by the earth-hard talisman flapped their wings and wanted to escape. When the Gold Spring Mountains disciples saw that the earth-hard talisman was effective, why would they let the earth-devouring insects escape? All of them waved their hands. They didn't hit the ground but directly hit the earth-devouring insects. Hundreds and thousands of yellow light balls exploded. Hundreds and thousands of earth-devouring insects turned into lumps of earth and fell to the ground. Chapter 23:44. Tu Hong sat on a chair in the cave. This was the first time he had laughed so happily since the start of the battle. The heavens are really protecting my Dao sect. The heavens are really protecting my Golden Spring Mountain. That's right, this is a lucky hit. Lan Xen also smiled. Those spirit insects seem to be of the earth attribute. Since the earth firm talisman is effective against the earth layer, then it must be even more effective against the spirit insects. General, there is no need to worry about this battle. That's right. Tu Hong smiled as he sat on a chair. He waved his hand. Let the sword cultivators madly attack the earth layer. Once they are exhausted, we will kill our way out. General's plan is flawless. This old man truly admires you. Lan Xen was sincerely convinced. Quick, quick, the battle sword above the earth layer couldn't help but fly closer. He hurriedly urged his disciples to gather the earth-devouring insects and avoid the earth-firm talismans. Then his killing intent surged, and he began to kill the closest Golden Spring Mountain disciples. However, even before these Golden Spring Mountain disciples were killed, they still threw out all of their earth-firm talismans. They completely disregarded their own lives, truly facing death with equanimity. Seeing the Golden Spring Mountain disciples fall one by one, and the brilliance in the air gradually extinguished, there weren't many earth-devouring insects left. The battle sword sighed and looked at Yuan Qing. Yuan Qing was also stunned. He never thought that there would be such a turn of events. The joy he had when he was teasing nascent soul cultivators had long disappeared. Fellow sword cultivators, I'm afraid there is no way to break through this earth layer today. Yuan Qing turned to the several leading illusory swordsmen to discuss. How about we temporarily withdraw our troops? Once we have some method, we can come back and kill the cultivators? That's the only way. An illusory swordsman nodded. If we swordsmen clear the earth layer, I'm afraid we will fall into the cultivators' trap. All right, Yuan Qing nodded. Just as he was about to wave his hand, he heard the fat man Li Min point his finger and say in surprise, Senior Yuan, look, the spirit-devouring insects are starting to eat the earth again. No, they are starting to eat the earth that was hit by the cultivators' yellow talismans. Yuan Qing was overjoyed and looked over. Sure enough, the earth-devouring worms that were hit by the earth's sturdy talismans started to move again. They were devouring the yellow soil that was as hard as crystals. Rustle, rustle. The sound was extremely crisp. It seemed that the spirit-swallowing bugs liked it very much. The hard soil was no match for the spirit-swallowing bug's teeth. When the battle sword saw this, even he didn't know why such a mutation occurred. He could only secretly rejoice in his heart. The heavens have blessed my sword domain. Ing Chao laughed loudly. That's right, the heavens are really protecting our sword region. The swordsmen all laughed. Meanwhile, Tu Hong's expression had turned extremely ugly. How is that possible? The earth beneath the earth-firm talisman is even harder than a top-grade crystal stone. Lan Xen whispered, her face ashen. Everything has its vanquisher. Tu Hong sighed dejectedly. Of course, everything had to be subdued. What Xiaohua wanted to subdue was naturally the jade marrow. In order to not leave behind any jade marrow for the sword cultivators, Xiaohua had worked very hard and diligently for nearly 2 days. His heart began to whisper to himself, "Damn it, I feel like something is wrong. If Cui Hongshan is Tu Hong's illegitimate son, then I can understand this arrangement. Otherwise, there would never be a meat pie that would fall from the sky. This young master will go and take a look." Xiaohua put away the wishful staff and used a concealment technique to return to where Cui Hongshan and the others were meditating. The 6 idiots were still sitting there obediently. Cui Hongshan didn't dare to put away his captain's token into his storage bag. Instead, he held it in his hands, looking at it from time to time for fear that he would delay the attack. Following the rules, Xiaohua sneered disdainfully. The disciples of the cultivation families are all so inflexible. It's no wonder that it's not easy for them to become characters that can stand proudly on the Dawn Rain continent. Cui Hongshan, if you are like this, then your bullshit dream. I'm afraid it will really be a dream. Then, without a word, Xiaohua fled towards the direction he had come from. Although Xiaohua's memory wasn't very good, after searching for half an hour, he still found the tunnel he had come from. However, at this time, the tunnel had been sealed, and a layer of solid restriction had firmly sealed the entrance of the cave. Ha! Xiaohua's divine sense swept through the restriction, and a trace of surprise appeared on his face. This restriction was very strange. Not only was it thick, but it also absorbed divine sense. Even the spiritual power fluctuations of the restriction were extremely unstable. Which cultivator laid this down? It's really rough. Xiaohua was somewhat disdainful. With a wave of his hand, he took out the rabbit talisman and was about to insert it into the array. However, when his first talisman touched the array, an earthy yellow brilliance immediately flashed, and an extremely slight explosion burst out from the array, like a fried soybean. Looking at the spiritual power fluctuations, it was like pouring water on oil, making a sizzling sound. Ouch! Xiaohua was shocked. He didn't dare to try again and immediately took back the talisman. It wasn't until the time it took to eat a meal that the spiritual power fluctuations gradually calmed down. Good boy, is the level of the cultivator who laid this array higher than this master or lower than this master? Xiaohua pinched his chin and was somewhat pensive. This array was the defensive array of Jianghu Mountain, and at this time, the cultivators of Jianghu Mountain were fighting with the swordsmen of Huan country. Perhaps it was a cruel battle above. How could Xiaohua dare to carelessly destroy it? If he wasn't careful, he would become the eternal sinner of the Dao sect, right? This is difficult. Xiaohua shook his head and turned around to look at the surface of the earth. Sure enough, it was as he had expected. The area around him was filled with this kind of extremely unstable formation. Xiaohua frowned and no longer flew upwards. He also didn't check other places and returned to the place where Cui Hongshan and the others were resting. Seeing Xiaohua return, Cui Hongshan's heart inexplicably calmed down, but his face was still indifferent. He looked up and down at Xiaohua, not even greeting him. "Get up!" Xiaohua flew in front of everyone and shouted, "This Xiao found some problems." Everyone was surprised and hurriedly got up. Zhen Minghui glanced at Cui Hongshan and turned to ask Xiaohua, "Junior brother Xiao, what did you find?" "We are trapped in an array." Xiaohua glanced at everyone and said, "This array seems to be very big." This Xiao didn't have the time to examine it carefully, but it seems that there is only one team of Imperial Thunder Sect disciples here. Everyone was stunned when they heard this. "Fellow Cui, what is your relationship with Tu Hong?" Xiaohua looked up and down at Cui Hongshan and asked with bad intentions. "What relationship?" Cui Hongshan frowned and said curiously, "You have already asked this question before, and this Cui has also answered it." "Strange." Xiaohua scratched his head and pointed at Zhen Minghui, "Senior brother Minghui, go to the east side and see if there are any other teams of disciples. And this Zhen will go over now." Zhen Minghui saw Xiaohua's serious expression and didn't dare to be negligent. This time, he didn't even look at Cui Hongshan and cupped his hands and said. When Zhen Minghui turned around, Xiao Hua ordered again, Senior Brother Su, Senior Brother Qiu, don't be idle. Take Zhenhua and Baisu Gu to the west side and other places. Su Qing and Qiu Su didn't dare to be negligent and hurriedly waved their hands to take the two Qi refinement disciples. Unexpectedly, Cui Hongshan anxiously said, Wait a moment. Su Qing and the others' eyes quickly turned, their gazes frequently moving between Xiao Hua and Cui Hongshan. Why don't you go? Cui Hongshan asked Xiao Hua. AI, this Xiao was born with a bad sense of direction. Xiao Hua sighed and shrugged. Moreover, this Xiao has an important matter to do. What matter? Cui Hongshan asked. Naturally, it is a mission to minimize the losses of my Dao sect. Hee, you won't understand even if I tell you. Xiao Hua waved his hand and said. Yes. Cui Hongshan nodded and turned his head. This Cui will go to the north. You all follow Xiao Hua's instructions and go to the west and south. Then, he threw the captain's token to Xiao Hua and said, You stay here and guard the left side. If there are any abnormalities on the token, quickly send a communication talisman, or act according to the previous arrangements. Xiao Hua thought for a moment and took the token. He was also afraid that something would really happen. If he was here, he would be far more important than these 6 idiots. However, after watching the 6 people leave, Xiao Hua only sat quietly for a moment. It was as if there were sores growing under his butt. The temptation of the jade essence was really too great. Forget it. Let's go and mine the jade essence. Xiao Hua got up and fled again. As long as I am within the formation, the token will react. When the time comes, this young master will come back again. Not to mention the discovery of the Imperial Thunder Sect's first team, the earth-devouring worms that were hit by the earth-hard talisman on the Quanjin Mountain stratum became even more ferocious. Not only did they easily devour the soil that was as hard as crystals, even the speed at which they devoured ordinary soil was more than twice as fast. In just half a day's time, 100 zhang deep hole had already appeared in the soil stratum. Cultivators really go for wool and come home shorn. Yuan Qing laughed loudly. Not only did they not use the talisman to kill our spiritual worms, they even helped our spiritual worms mutate. What made this old man the happiest was that their Quanjin Mountains disciples lost quite a few again. That's exactly the case. Battle Sword also laughed loudly at the side. Even this old man did not expect that this cultivator's talisman would actually have an effect on the earth-devouring worms. In the future, this old man still has to try more. Who knows, maybe I can cultivate the spirit-devouring worms. Battle Sword friend, can your earth-devouring worms rest for a while? Ing Chao reminded, if you want to pull the cultivator out from the ground, these earth-devouring worms are a strong aid. You can't kill the goose that lays the golden eggs. Yes, this junior understands. Battle Sword nodded. In another hour, we will let the earth-devouring worms rest. Ing Chao nodded slightly and said to Yuan Qing, if the earth-devouring worms rest, we sword cultivators should not be idle. Let's all exercise our hands and feet. Consecutive sword formation. Alright. Yuan Qing clapped his hands and said, this old man has been feeling a little lonely for the past half a day. Let's use the flying sword too. Chapter 23:45. Sure enough, an hour later, after the disciples of the Wild Beast Villa had collected the earth-devouring insects, the sword cultivators once again split into 2 groups. One group still stood on their swords and guarded in midair, while the other group formed into a formation and attacked the 300-meter-wide black hole. Several hundred sword cultivators with similar sword equipment each took out their flying swords. As the flying swords flew through the air, the similar sword intents on the flying swords resonated with each other, and the several hundred flying swords gradually condensed into a single massive flying sword. Weng weng, the humming of swords emitted from the massive flying sword. It was actually a cultivator's magic weapon. All sorts of heaven and earth spiritual energy began to rapidly surge forth, filling up the gaps between the small flying swords. Go! Several hundred sword cultivators moved their minds, all of them simultaneously chanting the same sword chant. The massive flying swords slowly began to move, and a multicolored sword light condensed into a massive sword light that pierced straight into the black hole. Whoa! The flying sword seemed to tear the air apart. When it entered the black hole, it gave rise to a strange sound of wind whistling. Its power was extremely great. Bang! With a loud explosion, countless clouds of dust burst out from the black hole, shooting straight up into the sky. However, as the winter wind blew, all of this dust was blown away, turning into dust that drifted between the heavens and earth. Oh my God! Seeing the several hundred sword cultivators on the light screen, Lon Exen couldn't help but cry out, This is simply the cultivation of swords. At most, it's just a little bit closer to the realm of swords. Tu Hong sneered. If their array formation really had the strength to transform into swords, then who would want to fight them? Yes, this old man understands. Lon Exen smiled. It's just that seeing such a fierce sword array for the first time makes me a bit nervous. Tu Hong did not express his opinion. He only squinted his eyes as he watched the swordsmen keep their flying swords and slowly form their formation again. He said faintly, These flying swords look very powerful, but they are useless. Which cultivator would directly face these several hundred swordsmen as an enemy? Even a cultivator whose strength is comparable to a third-grade illusory sword cultivator wouldn't allow them to easily form their sword array. If it were the many cultivators of my Dao sect, would they have the time to form a sword array? It's only because my Jingquan Mountains array is underground that they are wasting their sword origin for no reason. On top of that, you are strutting around in front of my Golden Spring Mountain. They're just a fox using a tiger's might to intimidate others. Tu Hong sneered. If old brother Lon goes out, they'll definitely be scared witless. I dare not. There must be an illusory swordsman beside the sword cultivator. This old man is no match for him. Lon Exen was very humble. She asked, Should we take advantage of this time and give them a head-on blow? Wait a little longer. Tu Hong only said 2 words before falling silent. As Lon Exen saw this, she could only stand there in silence, quietly watching the sword cultivator show off his might. He knew in his heart that his cultivation couldn't compare with Tu Hong's, and he was even more inferior to Tu Hong's when it came to commanding troops. In a battle where hundreds of people would die, he really couldn't deal with it. Seeing the numerous swordsmen fly out one after another and the black hole being struck down several hundred feet, Yuan Qing also laughed out loud. He flew up and loudly shouted, All of you retreat, let this old man move his hands and feet. The swordsmen who had just put away their flying swords and were about to use them again hurriedly agreed and scattered to the side. Yuan Qing flew up into the air. He pointed a finger and the flying sword beneath his feet shot up into the air. Yuan Qing opened his mouth and a sword origin shot out, quickly catching up with the flying sword. With a so sound, the flying sword suddenly accelerated, and a small spark flashed from the flying sword. The spark became increasingly hot, gradually expanding. In an instant, the flying sword flew up several dozen feet, and the spark had already turned into a fireball. However, this wasn't the end. The flying sword continued to fly up into the air. The bird cultivators in the air scattered, creating a large gap. Then, the flying sword suddenly burst apart, turning into a giant fireball. Speed! Yuan Qing's hands formed a sword seal, and he casually pointed his finger. His expression seemed relaxed, but there was a dignified look in his eyes. Twing! The sound of a sword humming came from the flying sword of a nearby swordsman. Looking at the fireball in the air, it was like a meteor, but also like a blazing sun falling from the heavens. It cut across the horizon, emitting a loud rumbling sound as it smashed into the black hole. Now's the time. Tu Hong and Lon Exen were also watching Yuan Qing show off. Just as Lon Exen was dumbfounded by the might of this flying sword, Tu Hong suddenly shouted out. Oh, Lon Exen was stunned, as if she hadn't reacted yet. Tu Hong's lips curved up in a smile. He pointed his finger at the triangular magic tool, and at the same time, his figure also flew out. On the ground a little further away from the black hole, there was a faint flash of light. At this time, many sword cultivators were scattered in the air, smiles hanging on their faces as they watched Yuan Qing display his skills. No one thought that Tu Hong would suddenly attack the illusory swordsman while he was displaying his power. And Yuan Qing's attention was also on the flying sword. When the meteor-like flying sword smashed into the black hole, a burst of battle cries resounded through Goldspring Mountain. Boom! There was an earth-shattering tremor. The entire ground was shaking. This boom was not only from Yuan Qing's flying sword, but also the sound of thousands of ambushing cultivators' artifacts and treasures hitting the sword cultivator's body. The sword cultivators were obviously caught off guard. As soon as they came into contact with the flying sword, over a dozen sword cultivators were struck by their magic tools, and their bodies fell from the sky. Damn it, Yuan Qing had already noticed the commotion when the flying sword fell. But his sword's seal had already been formed, and he couldn't stop the flying sword, so he had no choice but to drive the flying sword into the black hole. Seeing the sword cultivators fall, he flew into a rage out of humiliation. He pointed his finger, and the blazing sun once again flew out from the black hole, piercing straight towards the many Foundation establishment cultivators. The intense sword light was like a glaring sun as it struck the cultivators. Not to mention the cultivators fighting back, they couldn't even open their eyes. Yuan Qing, your opponent is this general. A roar sounded from the ground. A yellow light flashed, and Tu Hong's figure appeared in the air. Yuan Qing heard a cultivator call out his name. He was surprised, but he didn't withdraw the sword seal in his hand. Go! Tu Hong waved his hand, and the serpent spear he was holding in his hand flew into the air. The serpent spear whistled through the air, and it actually transformed into a yellow serpent that charged towards the scorching sun. The bloody snake opened its mouth wide, as if it wanted to swallow the blazing sun in one gulp. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.